Jean-Claude.
You're still wearing your Jurassic Park shirt. Like you're still trying to make that happen.
It's technically still Jurassic June.
It's over. I need you to move on.
You guys are so mean to my dinosaurs.
Listen, we supported you for 2 straight weeks.
I can't believe
we're done.
Jean-Claude Van Damme for 2 weeks. That's crazy.
Oh, we could do
We needed to.
We could do a month of Jean-Claude.
Yeah, I'm down.
We could do a Patreon episode of Jean-Claude Van Damme every week.
I'm starting to see why he was so popular. Like, cause
people loved him.
I watched more of the movies than we were supposed to. 'Cause like I said, I watched Hard Target. I'm like, fuck, that's a good movie.
I thought you watched Double Impact.
Oh, I'm sorry, Double Impact. That was the even better movie. Yeah, it was. He got a twin brother, and it's got the guy from Maverick, the bank owner from Maverick was Mel Gibson. I was like, man, there's all kinds of famous people in this movie. The Indian dude, like everybody was in that movie. It was awesome. The guy from Bloodsport was in it, the big bad. Like, man, I wish I could have watched this movie instead.
Bolo Young.
Yeah,
that guy.
Yeah, the big dude with the man titties. That guy.
Chong Li.
Chong Li. Welcome back to another episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. I am your host, the Salty Nerd, and I am joined, as always, by my illustrious co-hosts, Matthew Kadish, author extraordinaire. What's up, dude?
Kumite.
That's last week. And the ambassador of estrogen herself, kissed by fire, Juju.
Pleasure to be here.
What's up?
Hi.
And Sweet Cheeks himself, Matthew Vader, the Barbarian. What's up, buddy?
I forgot I shaved.
Hey, baby face.
Got the ogre beard going on.
Okay, so I've been studying like beard growth stuff and styles. That it would be technically called the scruffy goat.
The scruffy goat.
That is, you are rocking.
Sounds like a
scruffy
sex
goat.
act.
Yeah. Well, the plan is
Sounds like his barbarian name.
the plan is for the face to kind of phase into it. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of faded down into the point.
It's good.
So
It's good. Yeah, that's
I'm going full Gandalf when it's done.
fantastic.
So, yeah.
Nice.
I can't wait to see it. I'm trying to catch up, and it's just not happening.
Work will never let me do it when I go back. So
Anyway, so today's episode, we're going to be discussing the movies Hard Target and Street Fighter, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, as well as a Season 1 recap of Jean-Claude Van Johnson, the Amazon Prime original series that is just fantastic. Can't wait to talk about that. Before we get started, I would like to do a quick shout out. Please help us grow this podcast. Go to saltynerdclub.com. That is directly goes to our Patreon. You can throw us a little bit of cheddar and help support the podcast so we can make awesome, great episodes for you. And you get exclusive content plus stickers and a bunch of other stuff included in that package. You can throw us $1. You can throw us $5, $10, whatever you want to do. Pick your tier. Check us out and help support this fantastic podcast and a group of friends just sitting around talking about movies.
Yes, our goal is to get 1,000 patron subscribers. So if you want to be part of that initial 1,000, we would really appreciate
It's
it.
a very exclusive club.
and sometimes Salty just likes to send stuff out in the mail.
I send expensive shit to them. I'm addicted to sending awesome shit to my patrons.
We're like, Alex, these people only pay $1 a month.
I'm like, I don't care. I bought him a $50 t-shirt.
Why did you give that guy who gives us $1 $50 worth of swag?
I like being nice to people.
I know you're too nice, Dave.
Lots of value.
It's all good.
I only send nudes.
Again, I don't get these things.
Very cost effective.
I have not
Jude's
seen this.
only fan account is
That's the $50 patron tier.
50. That's the $100.
Oh, 100. Okay. All right. I don't know. Which one would you prefer?
50 for nudes of Kadish. 100 for nudes of me.
I'm the cheaper option.
Send us $500. I'll send you a topless picture of myself. So you don't want that.
Oh, Jesus. That went way off the rails. All right.
You got us boozed up before we even started.
I was so excited to drink some alcohol for this podcast. These movies were rough.
What?
All right, starting with let's start our discussion.
These movies were fantastic.
Let's start a discussion with Hard Target.
That really makes me question your thought process. These are the best movies ever. don't think Jean-Claude even liked these movies. So
you don't think so?
I don't know.
Well,
he did it for a paycheck.
He was coked up the entire time. So.
Dude. Okay, Hard Target. Matthew Kadish, why don't you set the stage for this fantastic movie? And don't forget the mullet, please. Just remember.
We're going to talk about that mullet.
I think we each have something to say about the mullet, how it affected us.
Okay.
All right. So Hard Target was Jean-Claude's follow-up to Time Cop. And it was his first movie with this legendary action director, John Woo. And basically, it's about a kind of merchant seaman who works out in New Orleans. He's kind of down on his luck. And he runs into this girl who's searching for her missing father. And she hires him to kind of be her guide through New Orleans as she's trying to find out what happened to her dad. And it turns out her dad was killed by an elite group of like manhunters, like literal manhunters, who basically charge rich people lots of money in order to facilitate these hunting down of like retired combat veterans and stuff like that. So it's basically the most dangerous game, but in New Orleans. And so throughout the course of this movie, Jean-Claude kind of stumbles across this shadowy organization, and he becomes one of their targets for, the hunt. And they pick the wrong guy to hunt, and he kind of switches the tables on them, starts hunting them down in the bayou. And it's basically just it's the most glorious 90s action movie you could think of. I mean, just
going on record. This is it, number one.
Like schmaltzy, like terrible, like
the slow-mo.
God, the slow motion.
Oh, we're going to talk about all that stuff.
It doesn't make any goddamn sense.
The doves.
The doves.
So, okay. So wait, before we get into this, like you guys are talking about a lot of stuff. So when I was in film school,
Back in Hollywood.
This was back in Pennsylvania. I went to film school. So like one of my idols as a director was this Hong Kong director named John Woo. And he was kind of like on the forefront of action cinema. He was the guy who was kind of doing stuff that made action balletic, like romantic, stuff like that. He was incorporating like the use of slow motion, and he would choreograph fight scenes almost like they were a ballet or a dance scene or something like that. And he was kind of taking the Hong Kong world by storm. He was making all these like really impressive action movies, and they were kind of filtering their way back to Hollywood. And Hollywood at the time wasn't making action movies anywhere near the level that he was. And so they kind of, no pun intended, wooed him over to America and said like, hey, let's give this guy a big budget Hollywood movie. And interestingly enough, Hard Target was the first big budget Hollywood movie from an actual Hollywood studio to be helmed by an Asian director, which was John Woo. And when I was in film school, I'll get into this in a little bit. This movie was actually like a Great White Buffalo scenario where John Woo had basically done a cut of this film, which was like, had an extra 30 minutes to the runtime. And the MPAA had given it an NC-17 rating because it was so violent.
Ooh.
And so they had to cut it back to get the R rating. And there was this bootleg copy of the original version of the movie that was kind of circulating around like film schools and stuff.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine got his hands on it.
The black market John Woo movies?
The black market. And it was one of these things that was like a work print cut. So like it had like the time code and stuff on it, but it was actually widescreen. And at the time, if you guys remember the video rental days, it was all pan and scan stuff, unless you got like a special edition. So I'd only ever seen this movie like outside of the theater in pan and scan version. And we had a saying in film school that with pan and scan, you miss half the joke because you don't get to see the whole picture as it was meant to be intended. And so my buddy, whose name was also Matt, ended up getting a bootleg copy of this thing from like, I don't know, like Japan, eBay or something like that. And like we were so excited when it came in the mail. We were like, we finally get to see the whole, like we don't get to miss the joke. And so, but it was still a terrible movie. But we got to see like the whole thing as John Woo kind of intended it to be seen. And it wasn't much better, but it was very much more John Woo. And for people out there who know of John Woo and like appreciate him, he's got these tropes. These John Woo tropes. He was kind of like the father of, it's called gun fu, which is basically, like kind of fighting and close quarters combats with guns. He was kind of the precursor to what eventually became The Matrix and John Wick and all this stuff.
What's that one with Batman? What's his name?
Val Kilmer?
No.
George
The
Clooney?
good
Michael
Batman.
Keaton.
No, the good Batman.
Oh, you're talking about
Equalizer?
Equilibrium.
Equilibrium.
Yeah, with the gun katas.
That was some hardcore gung fu.
Yeah, so like John Woo was kind of like the father of that, but he also was a guy, like in every one of his movies, he'd have like dark clad motorcyclists who were like shooting guns at people. He'd have doves flying in and out of frame. Like he'd have people with dual wielding pistols, firing guns with absolutely no kickback, like flying through the air and stuff like that. And so like when you watch Hard Target, and you guys were pointing out a lot of these things, it's like Hard Target's not a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. It's a John Woo movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme in it. And originally they actually, John Woo wanted to cast Kurt Russell as the main character. So that would have been a very different movie.
Yeah,
would have been the
different.
same exact movie.
Exact same movie. Yeah.
I don't know. They added a lot of spin kicking thanks to Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jean-Claude, he put his stamp on this movie for sure.
Well, Kurt Russell probably wouldn't have spin kicked that guy off the motorcycle.
No.
If you think Kurt Russell can't spin kick, I will fight you right now.
All right, so this was
only if he has an eye patch on.
So we've got Kadish's first time. Yeah.
Like I cannot wait to talk about this movie.
We are talking about it.
Well, you've been talking about it for 20 minutes.
I can't wait to really talk about it.
So this was my first time watching this movie. And God, is it glorious. It's so gloriously bad. 80s, 90s, whatever. I don't know. What year did this come out?
94.
94. So gloriously bad 90s. I think my favorite scene in the entire movie is when the forklift moves out of frame and you see Jean-Claude with his greasy mullet and it's slow motion, and then it turns and it pans onto the chick in the car and it zooms into her face and she's just so like, oh my God, now that's a man.
But that reveal is like three different shots faded into one another.
Yes.
It's like very typical John Woo, like
so
over the top, schmaltzy.
Oh my gosh, everything was so smalty about this,
and it had that weird twangy southern music to it.
Yeah, the
like the banjo.
Every time he did something badass, a banjo would play.
I liked it when they would do like edit cuts and Jean-Claude would be standing in front of the car in one cut and behind it in the other, and then back in front. Stuff like that.
Yeah, the fight scenes. Let's talk about the fight scenes. He was a superhero, right? There was that one scene that you just mentioned about him. He kicked the guy off the motorcycle.
Yeah.
So the dude's driving like 30 miles an hour on the motorcycle, and Jean-Claude spin kicks him, and in the helmet,
Hits his helmet.
and it doesn't. He just takes it.
Probably should have broke his leg.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
half.
that would have broke his leg for sure. Yeah, but no, this dude just goes flying. Oh, the gun physics in this movie are fantastic too. You get shot with literally anything, a 9mm pistol, and you're going like halfway across the room.
There's two things in this movie that I appreciate. Number one is Wilford Brimley, the baddest,
I knew it.
Uncle
old dude in the world, right?
And is your second one his accent?
That was great.
Can you guys give me some context? I have no idea who that guy is.
You don't know who Wilford Brimley is?
You never watched Cocoon?
No.
You've never seen the
You've
diabetes
never seen
commercials?
a Quaker Oats
You've never
commercial?
seen The Thing?
Diabetes.
Diabetes. That's
Yeah.
that dude?
That's that dude, yeah.
Holy shit.
Hey, do you have diabetes?
Diabetes.
Yeah, that's him.
I did not know that was him.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. That gives me a
Yeah,
little bit
he
more context.
tripped me up when I found out a month or so ago that when Wilford Brimley filmed Cocoon, he's the same age then that I am now.
He always looks so
It
old.
freaked me out. You have no idea how
And
much that
he's
freaked me
still
out.
alive.
Is
Oh,
he
yeah.
really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And the other thing I really appreciated was Lance Henriksen.
Oh, yeah.
I love Lance Henriksen.
Oh, he's so good in this.
He's
He just chews
He's
every
just-
scene he's in.
did I ever tell you the story about how I met him?
No.
I've met Lance Henriksen once. He'll never remember it, but and I felt like a total ass after I met him.
So
No,
just to make sure I know who you're talking about. You're talking about
Lance Henriksen,
Lance
the bad
Henriksen.
guy.
the bad
He's been
guy.
in like
He's
500
Alien.
movies.
Aliens too. He
Yeah,
was
he's Bishop,
right?
yeah.
And then he was Wayland later on in the
Yeah.
Alien vs. Predator movies.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So when I was a floor person at a casino up in Oregon, he used to film this show. It was this
Millennium.
He filmed it in Canada, I believe in Vancouver or somewhere up there. And the casino I worked at was around a casino between California and Canada, and he would stop in on his way back and forth when he drove once in a while. And I finally worked up the gumption one time to go up to him while he's playing blackjack. And like an asshole, I go, "Hey, is that thing you do with the knife in the hand, is that real?" And he just looks at me like I'm a complete dick. And I just turned around and I walked away.
He didn't say anything to you?
I bet he remembers that.
He gave me a glare, dude. It's
I
like,
guarantee
it's like, are you for real right now?
I guarantee you.
I got immediately embarrassed. And I turned around and I walked away.
We need to see if we can get hold of him and be like, "Do you remember this jackass?"
It was so bad. It was so bad. I can't believe those words came out of my mouth.
That's fantastic.
He is fantastic in this movie.
Oh, he's
like
awesome.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
there's a scene at the end where he catches on fire.
Oh yeah,
and
he just takes it.
It's actually him.
Yeah.
and it's not like a quick thing. Like he's there, he's on fire, and he's like taking his jacket off in the most slow, like methodical way possible.
Like he's just annoyed by the fire.
Yeah, he just takes it like a badass.
But did you notice that you could see all the anti-fire retardant on his face?
Yes. Immediately afterwards, you could see he's just covered in slime.
Yeah, his hair is all slicked.
Yeah, for like one scene, and then it goes away, and he's back dries again. Yeah, that was a really cool scene though, because he just took it. He's like, "Man, well, what did he say?" He's like, "You son of a bitch," and he just takes his jacket off, all casual.
Like Lance Hendrickson really wanted to work with John Woo, which was one of the reasons why he got cast in this movie. Where he was like, "I'll do anything you want me to. I'll show up, like whatever." And they're like, "Well, you want to be the bad guy?" He's like, "Yeah."
He was the best character,
and he had that stupid 200-year-old single shot gun.
Yeah. Oh, that was amazing!
Like, oh my god, this.
So I understand why they went that way, because he's supposed to be like such a good shot that he only needs one bullet.
Yeah.
It's like a thing of pride with him.
Yeah.
But it's like the most ineffective weapon you could possibly be carrying around.
He might as well have had a crossbow.
But that gun was like you would load it with these like elephant shotgun shells.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it was a 45. What is it? I can't remember the name of the round, but I was going to buy a rifle that carries that same round. It's like it is an elephant gun. It's crazy.
Like that was the gun where you shoot someone, they like fly across the room.
Yeah,
with it.
That it's not, you would just go through you, but yeah, totally.
It'd probably rip your shoulder out of its socket with the recoil too.
Not in a John Woo movie.
Not in a John Woo movie. So real quick, I just wanted to mention something before I forget, because I will forget. The Most Dangerous Game is my all-time favorite short story ever. It was read to me by my third grade English teacher. The full like old school story, all in graphic detail. He sat in front of the third grade class and was like, he's an old military vet, and he actually looked like what's the guy's name?
Wilford Brimley.
Wilford. He looks just like him. His name was Mr. Kenny. I will never forget this guy.
Of course, his name was Mr. Kenny.
Mr. Kenny, old school like veteran English teacher, and he read this story to us, and I was like, that is the most amazing story I've ever heard in my life.
Diabetes.
I love The Most Dangerous Game. So if there's any movie out there that's like based off of or takes points from The Most Dangerous Game, I'm in. And this movie was like, when I realized what the plot was, and I was like, oh, The Most Dangerous Game. I'm like, yes, this is going to be fantastic. And it did not disappoint.
You're an odd little duck, Alex.
It was amazing.
The only thing this movie didn't have was boobs. I don't remember seeing any boobs.
No, there was no boobs.
They needed boobs.
There was only one chick in the whole movie, right?
No, there were two. There
was
the cop.
the detective that died. Yeah, that's right.
But
Spoiler.
The woman, the woman who was like the main female.
She's so beautiful.
She was a Witchblade, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
She was the actress who played Witchblade in the TV series.
But yeah, I love this movie. It was so much fun to watch. It just
we can't talk about Hard Target without talking about Jean-Claude's hair.
Okay, let's dedicate a good 10 minutes to that mullet.
It's mullet time.
It's
mullet time.
I feel like we need like a sexy intro song.
It's mullet time.
And it was always wet, right?
No, not wet. Greasy.
Oh yeah.
That was like straight Crisco.
straight out of the WWE.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny is, okay, so in Time Cop, he had kind of like the semi-mullet thing going.
Yeah. Mini mullet.
And then in this movie, they go full mullet. And the reason they did that is because he knew that he was going to be doing a lot of spin kicking. So he wanted his hair to have that whip factor to it. So it was very like strategically long and greasy.
I think they even permed it because that shit was curly.
Oh yeah, it was super curly.
But they grew it out to that length specifically so that when he's doing his spinning, it would whip around cinematically and look really good in slow motion. It's like an old wrestler kind of like.
I just kind of figured they were extensions or something.
It looked like extensions for a little bit. I wasn't sure. Do you guys know
so much hair
if it's actually his hair?
I don't know. I think it was his hair. I mean, it was a time.
It was
90s.
His look, that greasy mullet with the black trench coat, the jeans with the tucked in shirt. My God.
I also love how in like every 90s action movie, all the henchmen are wearing these like zoot suits.
Yeah.
You know,
I love all the guys that were on motorcycles never took their helmet off.
Never. That's a John Woo thing.
Never took their helmet off. Doesn't matter if they were walking around a warehouse in the dark. They had their sun-shaded visor down.
And if they get punched in the helmet, they're like, they're all staggering.
Knocked me out. It was fantastic. Cadis, do you have anything else? Because this is very much like your movie, I think. I think you love this movie more than any of us. So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of stuff, that's very interesting about this movie.
He's got all
He's got
notes.
3 pages of notes.
Better let him get through the notes.
Sides.
I love it.
Did you see?
Both
Both
sides?
sides are filled
Okay,
up.
do you guys remember that scene from Seven where they had all the notebooks with the little tiny lettering in it? And that's Kadish.
That's Kadish.
I'm taking a picture.
Just because I'm the only one who prepares for this podcast
It's all up here, sweetheart.
does not mean I should be ridiculed for it.
I got this. I just feed off of your genius. I'm like one of those little sucker fish on the shark. All right, go ahead. What else you got?
Well, so this was John Woo's first American movie, and when Universal was bringing him over, they were kind of worried about his ability to actually run a English speaking film because he didn't speak like very good English. So one of the interesting things is that during this time period, so Sam Raimi and his producing partner Robert Tappert, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Sam Raimi was the creator and director of the Evil Dead movies. He did the 2000 Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire. Very famous director. And he had just done Army of Darkness for Universal and also Darkman. And he had produced Time Cop. So he had this relationship with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And Time Cop is like Jean-Claude Van Damme's biggest movie of all time. So.
Sam Raimi produced
Sam Raimi and Robert Tappert produced Time Cop. And so Universal went to Sam Raimi and they were like, hey, can you be on set with John Woo? And if things don't work out with him, we want you to take over the picture. And so Sam Raimi was like the ghost director on Hard Target, but he never actually directed anything because he was actually John Woo's biggest defender. Like when the studio people came and tried to meddle with him, Sam Raimi got up in their faces and he was like, you let John Woo do his fucking thing. and so like,
you leave John Woo
exactly
alone.
Yeah, that was his job. And like Sam Raimi was like his biggest defender.
That's awesome.
And but you can also see like Sam Raimi's influence in the movie because like that part where like the arrow's spinning and you got like that weird background that's like flying by.
Yeah.
That's pure Sam Raimi right there. So Sam Raimi and John Woo got along very well. And John Woo even said like the only time he ever saw Sam Raimi on set was when he showed up because he wanted to go out to dinner with him. So I
makes sense.
Yeah, I thought that was good. But John Woo was also on record as saying like he had a difficult time working with Van Damme. Because there's a story that he told where
John Woo said that or Sam Raimi?
John Woo said that.
John Woo said that. Okay.
Yeah. So John Woo has this story about how the way he films stuff, he uses multiple cameras to like catch like different things. So he'll shoot a scene with like 4 cameras on like one actor, that type of thing. So he'll have like close up, medium shot, wide shot, stuff like that. And Jean-Claude Van Damme one day he was like, John, I must have a camera for my muscles. and John Woo was like, what do you mean camera for your muscles? He's like, people come to my movies to see my muscles. I want close-ups of my muscles. I work very hard for these muscles. And John Woo was like,
I can respect that.
No, he didn't say that. John Woo was like, well, I've got 4 cameras on you already. I'll just focus one of them on your muscles. And so like every shot that Jean-Claude, when he was like showing off his arms, especially like in the third act of the film.
Oh yeah.
They always had to have a camera on his arms, just his arms. and John Woo, like when someone asks him, it's like Mr. Woo, are you sure you want to spend all this time focusing on his muscles? And he's like, I'm not going to use any of it. It's just to make him happy.
They really didn't, though. You know what happened? Street Fighter focused a lot on his muscles.
Well, this was Hard Target.
I know.
But I mean, like there's just so many things in this movie that are like, me as a John Woo fan, like I just can't get enough. Like the doves, like every scene where like the doves are like flying around. It's like
that's a big thing for him.
And then
it really is.
Like there's like the slow motion, which is a trope, and then there's the doves, which is a trope, and then there's like the slow motion doves. It's John Woo, you crazy man.
I always remember John Woo with the doves because my introduction
Mission Impossible 2.
Mission Impossible 2. Yes, there was multiple
way
scenes,
overdone.
Way overdone. Slow motion doves, slow motion everything in that movie, and that was my introduction to John Woo movies. I was like, oh, he did Mission Impossible 2. And every time I watch any other of his movies, I can't help but just be like, oh.
But when Jude and I were watching this, there were so many times where like I'd point to the screen, I'd be like, babe, wait for it. And like there was this line of dialogue.
Like, dude, shut up.
There was this line of dialogue where,
oh God, you're going to say it again.
Yes. Where the woman character, I forget her name, but like she tells Jean-Claude her name. And he's like, what type of a name is that? She's
Nat.
like,
oh yeah, Nat. Is it like I'm named after a bug?
Yeah, you're named after a bug. And she's like, well, what type of a name is Chance? And Jean-Claude Van Damme says, my mama took one. And that was a line that was in like all the trailers for this movie.
And Kadish has said that every day since we watched that movie.
I love how ridiculous that line is.
Fantastic.
I can't.
He's like, babe, my mama took a chance. Shut up.
But my second favorite scene is where they're in the bayou and they're running away from these guys hunting them. Jean-Claude Van Damme and the woman.
Where the f*** did they get the helicopter?
I know where he's going with it.
And there's a scene where a snake comes out.
Oh yeah.
And it's a rattlesnake, poisonous rattlesnake. It's about to bite this, gnat. And Jean-Claude Van Damme, lightning fast, reaches out and grabs it. And before it can bite him, he literally punches it out. He knocks it out with a punch.
He doesn't kill it.
He doesn't kill it.
He just renders it unconscious. That way they can use it later.
And then he sets a trap because he pulls off the snake's rattle.
He doesn't pull it off. He bites it off.
He bites off the snake's rattle so that it can't warn people that are hunting them.
And then he sets a trap. So like when someone trips this tripwire, the snake like attacks them from a tree and bites them on the face.
The worst snake attack I've ever seen. It came from like 20 feet away like an arrow. Just
it just looked like a vacuum hose that somebody like super glued teeth onto.
There's things in this movie that just had me rolling in my chair. Man. It was just like, why does this police detective have this strange woman and her transient boyfriend investigating crimes with her?
They're all partners now.
Well, they set that up by showing that the police were on strike.
Okay.
And so they didn't have any real backup in the city. And that's why the hunters
I'm going to go
there.
to the police station and file a missing persons report, and I'm going to investigate the report with the cop.
Yeah.
With my transient.
Pay attention, Atlanta.
It was the 90s. That happened all the time.
For real.
You need help.
For real.
Just
Also,
get
and I
some
love
homeless
these
people to help you.
these movies. It's like the thugs are worse shots than stormtroopers.
Yep.
Can't hit anything. And Jean-Claude, as good as he is a kicker, he can't miss anything with a gun.
Well,
it's incredible.
He's in a shotgun, so it was
no, I'm talking like when he's like surfing on the motorcycle.
Oh yeah.
With the gas tank and he jumps over the thing.
The explosions.
The explosions were great.
That's the biggest set piece in the movie, though, that we got to talk about, which is the game of chicken between the SUV and the motorcycle that Jean-Claude surfs on.
Yep.
And then jumps over the SUV when it impacts
It became a skateboard instead of a motorcycle.
It is the most ridiculous. And plus, it's funny because like you can see the shots where it's obviously the stuntman.
Yeah.
And then the shots with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it's like over cranked. And you can tell they're going like 2 miles an hour.
Oh, man, that stuntman's hair was even better than Jean-Claude.
Yeah, that was the
dope.
point where the movie completely jumped the shark.
Oh,
for me.
yeah.
When
I'm
he
like,
jumps over the SUV.
Really?
Yeah.
That
It's
far?
like, yeah. It was like, okay, I'm done.
He was on board up until then.
And we weren't even to Wilford Brimley yet.
And you can divide this movie up to pre-motorcycle surfing and post-motorcycle surfing because after that scene, they go into the bayou and it's like a completely different movie.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because the entire third act, the climax takes place in a Mardi Gras graveyard warehouse.
Yes.
In the middle of the swamp.
Which is
middle of
real.
the swamp, yeah.
Which is real. I want to preface this with the fact that those graveyards of those giant like floating parade for the Mardi Gras thing,
yeah.
that's a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like this was probably shot in a real Mardi Gras graveyard. I don't think they built all that stuff. I think that was probably like, hey, here's this warehouse of all this rotting stuff.
I think they actually did film a lot of this movie in New Orleans.
They filmed all of it there.
Yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about was like, has everyone here been to New Orleans before?
No, I've never been there.
Okay, so we have. I've been there several times, and during this movie is the least crowded I have ever seen any
they're in the
street in
French
New
Quarter.
Orleans
They're in the
my
French Quarter,
life.
and there's no one there.
Yeah, they're like the only people. It's like I don't
during
know,
the shootout?
like anytime.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of the day, she like goes to a diner. Everyone's in the diner. No one's on the street. And like these thugs come out and they're like, we're just going to rape this girl right here against your
was the
car.
90s.
And there's no one on the
yeah.
street. Like the homeless guy comes running through. There's like 6 people on the street at that point because he needed to yell help to people. Like there was no one. I was like, this is ridiculous. That was from the beginning. Opening shot. I was like, this is New Orleans? There's no people around.
Yeah, and it's completely empty.
I called bullshit from the opening scene. I was like, bullshit. You would never be able to walk down a street in New Orleans with no people. Unless this movie was set in the post-apocalypse.
It is set up in the movie. They mentioned that. Well, the reason, and you said this a little bit ago, but the reason why they're there is because the city is in unrest.
Yeah,
and it's easy to get away with crimes.
The police department's on strike.
Yeah.
at this
I don't
point.
remember that part.
You don't remember that? That was a conversation of like, we move around.
It didn't matter.
to different parts of the world.
When Nat went to the cop to put in the missing persons report for her dad, they had police picketing out in front, and so like they were kind of setting up that there was a police strike going on, and basically the reason that the hunts were taking place in New Orleans at that moment were because they could get away with it. They could get away with killing people without worrying about the police kind of cracking down on them, and they travel to all these different places that have like, civil unrest, specifically so that they can have these hunts without being interfered with.
Man, there's probably all kinds of hunts going on around the country right now.
Tell me about it, right? That was one of the things that I wanted to ask you. We'll go around the table real quick. Would you be able to survive this movie if you were one of the volunteers?
No,
No?
not at all.
No? Jude?
I can't take on both Lance Hendrickson and Arnold Vosloo.
No, man, I got bad knees.
Yeah, what about you, Vader? Could you survive being a volunteer?
No.
No?
Hell no.
You think you could?
Hell yeah.
Back in the day, maybe.
Hell yeah, I could.
Not right now.
Those guys didn't even try to escape.
Dude, I would be
They
that guy.
ran in a straight line.
I would be that guy hiring the homeless people to pass out porn flyers, getting his ear cut off with a pair of scissors.
yeah.
That guy. Oh man, this movie is.
I would have
bananas.
done a better job if I was the girl looking for her dad, though. I think I could have survived better than Nat could. But as one of the homeless volunteers, nah, dude, I'm dead. 5-minute head start, I might as well just sit down.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to run for my last 5
I
minutes
did-
of life. I'm just going to sit down.
I did have to laugh. You reminded me of that scene when Jean-Claude comes and kicks the thugs' ass. That they just got her bent over that car.
Yeah.
And she stays bent over the entire fight.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
And they're like he's like holding her down while he's like kicking her ass or something. It's funny. It's just like, that's really indignant. Really, really not a flattering scene for that chick in that
But
movie.
it's also funny because like they add in like this like kind of forced romance between Chance and Nat.
Oh yeah.
And in the director's cut, there's actually like a sex scene where like her and Jean-Claude like get it on.
Was there boobs?
Really?
I don't know, but the
Did you have your hand over your eyes?
they cut it out because they were trying to get the R rating, and because the MPA originally gave this an NC-17, which is like the kiss of death for the movie. So I think this movie went through like 18 different versions or something like that, where they were trying to like cut it down without completely destroying.
Which explains why it's so choppy.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
It really is. But like, there's so much stuff in this movie that is just like you don't get from most movies. Like, there's a scene where Jean-Claude Van Damme kicks a guy in the face and then unloads a clip right into his belly with his pinky finger.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh no, that's the bump stock. That's the bump stock technique.
But another really interesting thing here was that you get to see like actors' faces as they're impacted with like the punches in here, and that's not CGI.
No, that's real stunt work.
Yeah, and I mean like you can kind of recognize the guys who are like getting kicked in the face and stuff because like you've seen them in other movies as stuntmen, but like it's John Woo's style. It's just this over the top, balletic, like beautiful violence that he does really well. And the whole final act where like they're dual wielding pistols and firing at each other point blank and missing and stuff like that. Like that's all like
Yeah, that whole
just
scene where
vintage John Woo.
they're back to back on
Yeah.
the wall.
Oh,
That was classic John Woo
Fantastic.
there. Yeah, you've seen that in lots of movies. But
Yeah, there's a scene where Jean-Claude Van Damme and Arnold Vosloo are on opposite sides of this wall. They're kind of like having a little conversation
Talking to each other.
as they're like reloading their guns.
Imhotep for people who don't know is that.
That's who that was.
Imhotep from The Mummy.
It's like I know who that guy is.
Yeah, dude.
I've seen him in other movies, but I could not figure it out. Yeah.
We got to talk about that movie someday.
Someday.
God, I love that movie.
Yeah, and there's a scene where they're reloading their guns and having a little conversation, and they just turn around and like point their guns at each other.
Miss.
But they're shooting through a wall, so like that's why they're missing. They can't see each other.
This movie is the very definition of what I like to call awesomely bad movies. Like, it's so hard to watch, but you can't turn away. It's awesomely bad.
That third act
It's terrible.
inside the warehouse inside the graveyard, I loved it. Every minute I was like, yes, give me more.
Yeah.
I kind of chalk this movie up to movies that I'm glad I rewatched,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to care if I don't see it again for 15 years.
Yeah.
So
But like there's that scene where in that warehouse where Jean-Claude Van Damme lures one of the motorcycle guys towards him, and he kicks a can of gasoline
Oh yeah.
up in front of the guy's face and then shoots it with a shotgun, and it just
It
blows
ignites.
up. Yeah, it just
everybody's
blows up.
using incendiary rounds in this movie because every shot is an explosive. It's amazing.
yeah.
And then Wilford Brimley's there with his bow and arrow.
I was just going to say we need to talk more about Wilford Brimley.
Like he's on horseback shooting a bow and arrow.
he's Rambo.
He's
Yeah,
like
he's old
galloping
man
to
Rambo.
He's Rambo.
galloping
Yeah.
to battle.
And they do one of those fake outs where like they shoot him, so you think, oh no, Uncle Duvet is dead. And then like at the end, after all the bad guys are dead, they go to Uncle Duvet, and he sits up and he's like, oh, this is bad. And he pulls out his flask that caught the bullet from his inside vest pocket. He's like, oh no, that was my favorite
he
flask.
does this very terrible French Cajun accent the whole
terrible.
movie
I
that
thought it was
kind of
great.
comes and goes. It's so awful.
Because Wilford Brimley's original accent is just kind of like very kind of cowboyish. And to listen to him try to do like a French Creole accent, it's just like, it's so cringy.
It's so cringeworthy.
Fantastic mustache. though.
Uncle Wilford. Yeah.
Fantastic mustache.
Uncle Duvet.
Uncle Duvet. Oh yeah, I
So-
love. One of the things I've learned about this, watching all these Jean-Claude movies, is that every single movie so far, except for Street Fighter, has had a very specific reason as to why he's French. And I just wanted to give him a little credit for having a little bit of backstory as to why Jean-Claude is French, even though he's an American hero and he's all these other movies, American
Well,
soldiers.
a lot of people in New Orleans are.
Yeah. So I was
Well-
like, man, that's solid writing.
Yeah.
Funny enough, though,
job.
like once they cast Jean-Claude, they actually rewrote the script to give him less dialogue.
He didn't need dialogue, man. He just
Mama took a
Maybe.
chance.
just punched people.
His mama took a chance. That's right.
you know, they need to do a resurgence after this Van Johnson show, they need to do a Highlander rework or redo, and he can play the Sean Connery role.
Ooh.
He can be the Spaniard.
The Spaniard.
A French Spaniard.
French Spaniard.
Get Christopher Lambert.
All right.
So scale of 1 to 10.
Ooh.
Yes. What's your final rating?
Okay, so for an actual
On the
movie,
scale of awesomely bad.
Awesomely
not-
bad
yeah,
scale. Okay,
yeah.
this is not a regular
not
movie
like,
scale.
This is a film.
yeah,
No.
Stick your nose up. My film rating for this movie is like probably 3, maybe 2 out of 10. It's
Okay.
terrible. The editing is
But
terrible.
on the scale of awesomely bad.
Awesomely bad, it's got to be like a 9.
Mm-hmm.
It's up there. Up there with the awesomely bad.
Kadish?
Kadish, what about you? With film score and then awesomely bad score.
So, from a writing perspective, it's probably a 3. But from like a fan of John Woo perspective in terms of filmmaking and stuff like that, I'd give it a 7. Awesomely bad, 9, definitely. Yeah.
Jude?
Like this is definitely one of my guilty pleasure movies.
Oh, for sure.
It is.
Is this your 1998 Godzilla?
Not necessarily. All of John Woo's American movies are kind of guilty pleasure because none of them are really good. Like Face Off. Oh my God! If we ever do it,
I love that movie.
I love that movie too.
Face Off was his next one after this, right?
If it wasn't, it was right after that one. I'm such a fan of his Hong Kong work that to me, like, there's just something special about John Woo movies, and I think I have a bit more rose-colored glasses when it comes to his stuff than the average moviegoer would, simply because I have so much respect for him. Because this is a guy, like, we wouldn't have The Matrix if it wasn't for John Woo's style of filming action. We wouldn't have John Wick if it wasn't for John Woo.
Oh, for sure.
So like, this was the guy who basically came in and broke Hollywood out of the 1980s action mold. Like, he was the one who kind of ushered us into this modern age of action movies. So I just have a soft spot in my heart for John Woo films.
That's fair. I can dig it. Jude, what would you do for film score? Stick your nose up and then awesomely bad score.
Film school. This is a 1 or a 0 for me.
Wow.
Yeah, it's rough.
Okay.
But on the scale of awesomely bad, like 9 or 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you rate the mullet?
Ooh, it's a real good mullet. I give this mullet, I give it a 7 on the scale of length.
There's longer mullets?
Well,
There's the Joe Dirt mullet.
like
Billy Ray Cyrus.
like a
mullet.
10 would be so short in the front that it's like spiky,
Okay.
and then really long in the back. That's a 10.
Okay.
So,
He had a little bit of
but for the awesomely wetness, the moisture of it,
The moisture of the mullet?
I give it an 8.5.
Quite a moist
almost
mullet.
made me spit out my beer.
The moistness level of his mullet.
She described a mullet by saying moist.
It's like, how moist did his mullet make you?
Yeah, like when Nat sees him after those cars clear the way, he's just like, ooh, look at that mullet.
You're making me cry.
Is it a
slow-mo.
Triple H wetness or
What's the name of the camera move where it's like it focuses in, but at the same time pans out? You zoom in with the camera and you pull back with the
Yeah,
dolly.
it's that Scorsese move.
Yeah, what is that called? There's a specific name for it though. I can't remember.
I feel like it's a parallax dolly, or
something like that. Yeah, it's some fancy name for it, but I recognized it right away, and I was like, oh, they're doing the move. It's the Jaws move when he's on the beach and he realizes there's a shark in the water. It's that. Like, yeah. Anyway,
said Brett the Hitman Hart moist?
He did look like Brett the Hitman Hart. He needed the mirrored shades.
what about you, Vader? On a film scale, what would you give it versus a?
Probably 3 and around a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all about the same. That's our discussion on Hard Target. Please go check this movie out. It's freaking fantastic. You will not regret it. Before we move on to the next subject, which is Street Fighter, I wanted to let you guys know that you can check out this podcast on YouTube. SaltyNerdVideo.com takes you straight to our YouTube channel. You can like, subscribe. We have all of our content there. Our full episodes, 2-3 hours long. And what we do is we split those things up in nice, digestible segments based off of subject of the podcast for your listening pleasure. So it doesn't take you 2 hours. So if you just want to listen to a little bit or half an episode or whatever, it's right there. Please like, subscribe, subscribe, comment, let us know what you're thinking, let us know what you want to listen to, and we would look forward to interacting with you online. That's saltynerdvideo.com, straight to our YouTube channel. Whose freaking idea was it to watch this movie?
It was mine.
Okay, look.
Wait, you got the double dip this week?
I did. Yeah.
So it was also his idea.
That never happens again.
I forgot we were supposed to watch Street Fighter, and I watched half of Double Impact first, and I was like, man, this is a freaking cool movie.
Isn't Double Impact a video game movie too?
I don't know.
You're thinking of Double
think so.
Dragon.
Double. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, Double Impact was when he had a twin brother, and he didn't know, and they were like complete opposites. Like one was a straight-laced dude, and the other dude was like some crime lord guy.
So it was a Disney movie?
It was pretty freaking cool, though. Like I was into it, and it was violent, and had a cool fight scene.
Did it have boobs? Because Vader's not going to watch it if it doesn't have boobs.
I don't know.
There's no boobs in this movie either. It's very
That's why
disappointing.
you're so upset when you walked in today.
This is a freaking Cartoon Network movie. Street Fighter. We're talking about Jean-Claude Street Fighter. Matthew Kadish, set the table for us. What the hell is this stupid movie all about?
All right, so this is a movie based off of the Capcom video game Street Fighter 2, not the first Street Fighter, Street Fighter 2. And basically the story of this movie is that M. Bison is this dictator in this kind of country of Pantaloo or something like that.
Jambaloo or something.
Shadaloo.
Shadaloo.
Sounds very racist.
Yeah. And basically he's been developing these high-tech weapons that have allowed him to basically invade and take over all the surrounding countries. And so basically his conquest has garnered the ire of all the civilized countries who see all the war crimes he's committing. So the AN, not the UN, this is the allied nations, send in their troops to try to contain Bison's conquest. And while they're kind of like trying to keep him from conquering more of these third world countries, he's building up, kind of partnering with this criminal element to smuggle him new weapons and technology so that he can eventually, take over the world. And he has this vision of, he calls it Bisonopolis, which is the perfect city. And basically he's going to control the entire world and force them to have peace by being a dictator. And Jean-Claude Van Damme plays the character of Guile, Colonel Guile, who is the head of the AN troops. And he teams up with these street fighters to try to infiltrate Bison's secret lair, find out where he is, and then assault the lair, and take him out once and for all. And then you basically have this final climactic battle between Bison's henchmen and the AN allied people.
God, this movie is so bad.
Kidnapped his best friend and turned him into a monster.
Yeah. Turned him into Hulk.
The funny part that
Like a debunked Captain America.
I love how they were like, muscle mass is increased by 90%. And the guy came out and it was like, he didn't look
Skinny,
any
yeah, he didn't
bigger.
look
He
very
just
big.
looked like some, like,
yeah, I was expecting some kind of Bane
he looked like
thing
he
out
had
of
like
Batman.
a runner's body.
Just a
I was
bad,
like, that guy's kind of svelte.
a terrible red wig. Like the skinny dude comes out.
His nostrils were a little bit flared.
He
But
had like a Klingon forehead.
Well,
and
it
some
was
stuff.
funny because the actor who played Blanca, which is the character you're talking about, he only was used for close-ups. So he had to get like 3 hours of like makeup and prosthetics and stuff. And then they just used his stunt double for like the long shots and stuff for doing like all like the physical activity. And he was just like, so why did I go through 4 hours of makeup for like 2 seconds of screen time?
That's ridiculous.
You know,
I have nothing to say about this movie. It was terrible.
I was shocked at how many actual fairly good actors are in this movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
people got their start with this movie.
No, or their end.
And in Raul
I mean,
Julia's
Raul
case,
Julia,
Yeah.
this is his last movie.
yeah.
Who's
It's-
that? The bad guy?
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
Bison.
Okay.
He was
Yeah,
also
he
in the
died.
Addams Family movies.
So this
Yeah.
was 94 and Hard Target was I think 93 actually.
Okay.
Oh wow, they
You
came
know,
out that close together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was Jean-Claude thinking?
Thinking I need money for my coke habit.
He was
Is
thinking
that all this is?
he was thinking he was going to get $8 million, which was the biggest payday of his career at that point.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like he had just come off of
I'd do Street Fighter for $8 million.
Yeah.
he had just come off of Time
Would you
Cop.
go blonde for $8
Oh
million?
yeah, for sure. Dime me up.
So he had just come up off of Time Cop, which was his highest grossing movie in ever. Basically, it made over $100 million at the box office, and so he was like really like the big in-demand action star in Hollywood at this point in time. And so one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this movie is because the actual behind-the-scenes making of this movie was so much more interesting than the actual movie itself.
Good, because the actual movie was not
It
interesting.
was terrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But like,
So boring.
if you know everything that like went into the making of this movie, like it becomes so much more of an interesting film to watch. Because okay, so first of all,
Well, hold on. Before we get super deep into it, let's go around the table and get our general thoughts on the movie. I was watching this and I was like, this is like a bad kids movie, like Air Bud level bad.
Yeah.
And I could not for the life of me understand why any of these actors would sign up for this movie.
Yeah. So both
And-
movies, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And both movies that we're talking about today are not good movies. However, the difference is that Hard Target is like that awesomely bad, and this is just bad.
Yeah,
it's just
not
a bad
fun.
movie.
I think you texted me. You were like, "I want my $3 back for the rental fee." It was like, good Lord.
I was kind of annoyed that some of these actors would actually be in this movie. Wes Studi, he's great. He played the eye patch guy.
Oh, okay.
Sagat.
2 years earlier, he was Magua in Last of the Mohicans. Great, fantastic character.
Kylie Minogue.
Yeah.
Kylie Minogue is in it.
This is like Oscar level movies that these people are in, and he's doing this piece of shit. I couldn't understand it.
Yeah,
But
there's got to
whatever.
be something. I mean, I'm sure Kej is going to fill us in.
Well,
as
Yeah.
to, like, what drew people into
I
this
think
movie.
originally it was set to be like this big blockbuster movie, and it was just a total flop.
It looked like
Did
It wasn't a flop
episode.
though.
What time?
It
what-
wasn't?
No, it rivaled Time Cop's box office drop.
When did
It was a budget of 30 million and it made over 100 million.
Oh,
at the
that
box
explains
office.
why everything looks so crappy.
Yeah, and when did Mortal Kombat come out?
It came out the same year.
Was it so they were competing with Mortal Kombat then?
Basically, Jean-Claude Van Damme was offered the role of Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat, and
Yeah.
he turned it down to do this movie.
Because Mortal Kombat, as bad as it is, it's 10 times better than this movie. I thought,
I don't think
it's
I've
just
ever seen Mortal Kombat movie.
it's terrible.
It was a lot more
but it's
faithful to
fun.
the source material.
Yeah, there's actual,
This.
fighting. in it.
It's so badly campy.
Oh my God! Yeah, it felt like a Power Rangers episode.
Yeah.
It looked like a Power Rangers episode.
Yeah.
It
The-
wasn't.
the
Power
sets.
Rangers is better.
The sets and the costumes. They look so like cosplay. Like
Yeah.
not good cosplay either.
Yeah.
Power Rangers is way better choreographed than this. It's just this looked like
There's a reason
trash.
for that, though.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead, fill us in, man.
Fill us in, man. What
Don't hold
happened?
back.
What happened to this movie? Why is it so bad? And
so
how
much.
did they get so many people
And could it have been better?
to get into it? Yeah, could it have been
It
better?
definitely could have been better. So first of all, you have to realize that. So the guy who was the writer and director of this, his name was Stephen S. D'Souza, and this is a guy who's responsible for some of like the biggest 80s action movies you can think of. So like he wrote Die Hard, he wrote 48 Hours, he wrote Commando, and this was his first directing gig. And the way it came about was that Capcom was going around shopping this out to Hollywood as like, because like their game was like super popular at the time. And so they went to Hollywood and they're like, hey, we want to make a movie version of this. And so all the studios were kind of bidding for it. And I believe Universal called up Stephen D'Souza and was like, hey, we have the Capcom guys coming in. We need to pitch them something. Can you come in and, do the pitch for us? And so he came in and he was like, okay, I'll do my pitch if you agree to let me direct this. And they were like, okay, if you can get us this deal, we'll let you direct. And so he kind of pitched the idea to Capcom where he came up with this idea that instead of doing it like kind of like a martial arts tournament thing, it was going to be more like a spy movie where you had like the evil genius M. Bison with his secret lair, and the AN guys would have to like come in and basically be like, James Bond and, fight this guy. And the Capcom guys had kind of been leaning in that direction anyway. So when they heard his pitch, they're like, we're totally on the same page. And so they decided to go with Universal for it. And, being his first directing gig, Universal didn't want to put too much money into this. So like they gave him like $30 million and offered him something like, I think like a 60-day shoot or something like that in both
Jeez.
Thailand and Australia. And so basically, this was, Stephen D'Souza's first directing gig. He also wrote the movie. And originally he was going to cast like a bunch of unknowns because Capcom wanted all 19 Street Fighter characters in the movie, and D'Souza was like people lose track of characters after 7. He's like, we can't do more than 7, and Capcom kept saying like, well, what about this character? What about this character? So he eventually got them to agree to 9. So there are like 9 main characters in this
What did
movie.
Avengers Infinity War have?
It had way more, but I mean, like you had gotten to know those characters over the course of
like 10
movies.
years. We kind of knew who these people were.
But there's a reason why 7 works, because you have like the 7 Samurai, the Magnificent Seven, stuff like that. Anything more than that, audiences tend to lose track of like who characters are,
especially in one movie.
So originally he wanted to cast a bunch of unknowns and train them to fight and then like, you know, go and shoot the movie. And Capcom, because they were co-financing it, they were like, we really want a big star to be in this movie. And so they decided, hey, Universal has a 4-picture deal with, you know, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Let's get Jean-Claude Van Damme for this. And Jean-Claude Van Damme was like, well, if you want me, you know, you're going to have to pay me. So like they decided to pay him $8 million to be in this
full
movie.
Budget of the movie is $30 million.
Yeah.
And he got 8? He
got 8.
Almost got a third of the budget?
Yes.
God.
And then get this.
Trying to find out how much Kylie Minogue made for it.
and then they decide to cast Raul Julia as the bad guy, and he's like a major actor as well. So basically, I think that was like another $6 million for Raul Julia.
God.
So
$10 million to make this movie.
Yeah, basically.
Well, Kylie Minogue is like Australia's like Michael Jackson. She's like the highest grossing performer of all time in Australia.
Yeah.
Wow.
So basically, how she came about, because they were shooting in Australia, D'Souza was getting a lot of flack from the Australian Actors Guild for not using any Australians in his movie. And so on a flight to Australia to meet with these guys, he saw a magazine with Kylie Minogue on the cover, and he was like, she'll do. And that's how he decided to cast her, because he needed to throw a bone to the Australian Actors Guild because they were shooting there. And so like by casting her, he basically solved one of his headaches in directing this movie. Wow. But because of the casting of Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia, he had no money to hire any other actors. So he basically had to like just kind of go with what he could get.
A bunch of extras.
But a bunch of people who like either weren't well known or hadn't done like movies before. Like this was Ming-Na Wen's first movie, I believe. And also the guy who plays Balrog, the black boxer guy.
Oh God.
He was Agent Johnson from Die Hard. I don't know if you recognized him from that. The no relation
That
guy.
haircut on that dude.
Well, it
Right
was
out of the
video
video
game
game.
accurate. Yeah.
Damn.
All of their costumes were great. Haircuts, costumes, everything. That was right out of the video.
Who was the guy that his dialogue was so bad?
Well, all of their dialogue.
No. You said wasn't he originally supposed to be Jean-Claude's character? Or something?
Okay. So basically, the character of Ryu, who's like the main character from the video games.
Ryu.
He was like the Asian kind of like hero guy.
Yeah.
He's the Bruce Lee fighter.
Yeah, the Bruce Lee fighter. And in like when they were casting the movie, they casted this one actor, Steven D'Souza did, who was like, he spoke English very well, but he wasn't a fighter. Like he's just a good actor, and you'll recognize him from other things. I forget the actor's name.
I've seen him a couple. Yeah, I've seen him around.
But Capcom wanted a Japanese action star to play that role, and so they were like, we want you to cast this guy. His name was Kinya Samada. And he was basically like a really big draw in Japan, and Capcom wanted, people in Japan to come out in droves for this movie. So they're like, you have to cast him as Ryu. You have to cast him as Ryu. And Steven D'Souza's like, well, all right, cast Ryu. We got this guy. And they're like, well, you need to figure out a way to get this guy in our movie. And so he created a whole new character for him as one of the like AN like commanders or something like that. And the guy came in and he could barely speak English. And so this is the guy that Capcom wanted to be headlining their movie, by the way. So he comes in for this role that was made up for him, and he knew that he lost out to this English-speaking actor, so he was like really bitter about it. And if you watch the movie, all of his lines are very obviously dubbed, like overdubbed.
It's so bad.
Which guy?
And his name was like
It's like general or commander or something.
I don't remember.
Yeah, the actor's name was Kenya Samada.
I checked out of this movie. I couldn't watch it.
But it's funny because the only part in the movie where he wasn't overdubbed was when he spoke something in Japanese.
Yeah.
But the whole like drama behind this film was very interesting because this was at like Jean-Claude Van Damme's peak, like prima donna phase. He was basically he had a $10,000 a week cocaine habit.
God damn.
And he would show up to set coked out of his mind. And it was so bad that the studio had to hire a handler to come out and try to keep him under control. But apparently the handler was like a big partier as well. So like he just enabled Jean-Claude.
Oh my God.
Like they would go to Hong Kong for the weekend and then like they wouldn't come back on until like late on Monday when like the shooting's already like we're scheduled to shoot on Monday and Jean-Claude Van Damme comes back.
Wait,
that
where
night.
did they shoot?
So they shot in Thailand.
Okay.
And they shot in Australia.
Okay. So they were shooting in Thailand. They would go to Hong Kong and just like disappear for a couple of days
for the weekend. Yeah.
for the weekend and then not come back until halfway
Yeah.
through the shooting.
I'm looking
That's
at this
so
right now, right?
bananas, dude.
I'm looking on IMDb, and you can tell they didn't put a lot of effort into Mr. Sawada's character. Because number one, I watched this movie this morning. I don't remember this character. But Kenya Sawada's character in the movie is named Captain Sawada. No lie.
That's awesome.
That's
they were
funny.
just like, make him a
Just
character.
put him in. Just put him in. Put him in somewhere.
Yeah, put him in somewhere. Jean-Claude Van Damme was insanely hard to work with on this movie, apparently. Like he wouldn't come out of his trailer until he was ready. He would basically, he took over like 2 penthouse suites in the hotel and had a gym built in one of them so he could go work out.
Well, he was jacked.
Well, he would say, like if he refused to come to the set, they'd be like, Jean-Claude, we need to go shoot. And he's like, no, my muscles aren't ready. And I have to pump them up.
Yeah.
My muscles aren't pumped
That's
Gotta
up.
get
a
that
thing.
pump, man.
That's a thing.
Yeah, that is a
We're
thing.
here to pump you
You
up.
Like all those big workout guys like Schwarzenegger and The Rock, like they work out constantly on set to make sure that they're
You gotta get
pumped for
that swole.
scene. Yeah, you got to get swole for the
Yeah.
scene. So that's legit. But
But like he wouldn't come out of his trailer, and when they were finally able to coax him out of his trailer to come shoot, he'd bring like bottles of booze with him, and just be drinking on set. And they're like Jean-Claude, like for insurance purposes, we can't have you drinking on set. And he's like, yo, I'm Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So he was in full diva mode doing this.
like full diva mode. Like people like the actors hated working with him just because like he was just such a prima donna, and basically like when like Jean-Claude's antics kept putting them behind the shooting schedule. Like I think like 3 days into shooting, they were already like 10 days behind
my
schedule.
God, you know a lot about the backstory of this movie.
He
Well,
loves
it's
it.
fat.
He actually does his research.
Yeah, but this is like I just want to talk about the movie. He's like, no, this is what happened.
Well, you can't talk about the movie unless you talk about this stuff because it had a direct impact on the film.
God, it was terrible.
And also during this time, Jean-Claude Van Damme was cheating on his third wife with Kylie Minogue.
Minogue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were very hush-hush about it and would not admit to it until many years later after he was already divorced. He finally admitted.
But this affair was happening while his third wife was pregnant with his son. And he had just married this third wife after his second divorce, and they were already having problems. So it was,
He actually married this wife twice.
yeah.
What?
Yeah, so this is his third wife. They later divorced. He married someone else and then got divorced, and then he remarried his third wife.
So
God.
so there was like a lot of this crazy stuff going on, and everyone on the cast loved Kylie Minogue. And she would do cool stuff like she rented out this bar next to like the sound stages so that it was such a stressful shoot that everyone needed a place to go and unwind. So like she just rented out this bar and she was like, hey, everyone, drinks are on me.
This movie was a stressful shoot.
Oh, you have no
Oh, I
idea.
imagine it was.
You have no idea because in addition to Jean-Claude like just being like a huge prima donna, like he was every like stereotype you see of actors behaving badly in Hollywood on this movie.
Oh my God.
Wasn't Raul Julia really sick during the filming too?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, excuse me.
Just wait a second, Jude.
Shut up.
Shut up.
I mean, I just wanted to say something so people know I'm still
Jude,
here.
just sit over there and look pretty, okay? All right, good.
Yeah, on the podcast.
Podcast that nobody can see.
I look really nice today, you guys.
I'm 2 bottles in. I'm good. Just take it away, Kay. Sure, go ahead.
So in addition to Jean-Claude's bad behavior, you had someone who caught like this tropical disease from like being exposed to river water in Thailand.
Oh, who was that?
It was just someone on the crew. And then like you had the line producer had like a heart attack, and like all these people were were like the entire cast and crew was malnourished because of the food in Thailand. It was like really bad. And it was so hot that they were like losing water weight. So like if you watch the movie, you can tell which scenes are in Thailand and which are in Australia based off of how skinny they are.
Is that why poor Blanca had no muscles?
Yes, exactly.
Oh my God.
But like there were things that just kept delaying like the shooting of this movie. So like the big thing was Raul Julia. So unbeknownst to everyone when he was cast, he had actually been fighting stomach cancer for like, a number of months. And he had gone in for surgery, and when he kind of came out of it, he was offered the role of Street Fighter. He knew that his time was numbered, and his kids were such fans of the game. He was like, you know what, I want to do this for my kids, and so that was his impetus for taking on the role. And when he got to the set to be like fitted for his costume, he was like completely emaciated. He looked like a skeleton, because he had just come out of like chemo and he had the stomach surgery and stuff like that. And so the costume designer called up Steven D'Souza, and she was like, we got a problem. And the original plan for this movie was that they were going to shoot all of Raul Julia's kind of like, talking scenes at the front of the schedule. And that would give them time to train the actors to do the fighting scenes for the later half of the schedule. And because of Raul Julia's like appearance, they had to wait for him to kind of like get healthier and like put on weight. And so like they had to move that to the back of the schedule, which means all the fight scenes had to be moved to the front. And none of the actors were trained in fighting except for like Jean-Claude Van Damme or like whatever. So it completely screwed up this whole plan that D'Souza had for making this movie, because he basically like had to like reshuffle his shooting schedule on the fly while he was dealing with Jean-Claude Van Damme screwing up his shooting schedule as well. And it got so bad that like the studio would be like, like you're 10 days behind schedule, you need to do something. And so he would literally just like pull a page out of the script at random and throw it away. He's like, okay, we're caught up now. he just wouldn't shoot it because he was trying to meet the schedule. And this happened so often that by the time they got into the editing bay, they realized that they were missing like a third of the movie. And they had to go back and do reshoots in order to just make the movie make sense. And one of the funniest things was that, so in order to kind of stay on schedule, they had this dual shooting system where Steven D'Souza would be working with the actors in one soundstage, and then in a opposite soundstage, they had Charlie Pisarini, I think his name is. He was the stunt coordinator and second unit director on the movie, and he was the guy who was basically, the fight coordinator. He was the one who was supposed to be training these guys, the actors, to do stuff, and he was shooting all the action scenes on the sister soundstage. And when Steven D'Souza would sit down and watch the dailies from the second unit that Pisarini was shooting, he was like, everyone's fighting the same way. Like none of the characters are fighting in a different style. Everyone's fight style is just the same. And so he went to Pisarini. He's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, what? He's like, each one of these characters has to have their unique fighting style. And Pisarini pulls an Alex, and he's like, well, that's not realistic.
It's the video game.
He's like, no one would actually fight that way. Like, if you're fighting, like, this is how you fight. And D'Souza's like, this is a fucking video game movie, man. and so the director and the second unit director almost came to blows over the fact that the second unit director didn't want to teach the guys how to do unique fighting styles. And so like D'Souza had to go back and reshoot all like the fight scenes to incorporate like the character's signature moves, because that was something Capcom, which was a co-financer on the film, like required.
Yeah.
Well,
It's like,
geez,
makes sense. It's their product.
Yeah.
No wonder Van Damme didn't want to play.
Dude, this
I get it.
like hearing all this behind the scenes drama, and then seeing the end result, it's like, what? Why? It's way too much effort for what you actually got. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus, just call it quits. Pull the plug.
And it's funny, the actor who played Ryu, I forget the guy's name, but like, you know, the day he was supposed to have that pit fight with Vega, so he shows up on set, he's having dinner at the craft services, or breakfast at the craft services table or whatever, and you know, the PA comes up to him and,
Byron Mann.
yeah,
is his name.
so he's like, Mr. Mann, are you ready for your knife fight? And he's like, wait, what? It's like, no one had ever trained him on this. And so like they put him in this pit fight and they give him a real knife.
What?
Yeah, that knife that he was like spinning around himself, that was real. That was not a dull blade. So like he went to one of the stunt guys and he was like, show me how to use this and not kill myself. and so like the guy just did like some like twirls for him, and then he just tried his best to mimic that.
Oh my God.
In the actual movie. And he was like, I could have literally killed someone.
That is insane.
But like that's how chaotic this movie was. It was just like the whole thing was just like one huge clusterfuck from beginning to end.
Oh my God, man. It's so sad. It's so sad because the end of the movie's terrible. So it's like all this effort was just for nothing.
And it was funny because like you guys remember that like the part where Jean-Claude Van Damme's character like flies out of the Blanca chamber and you know, delivers that flying kick to Bison. So like when they did that, so Jean-Claude Van Damme was so coked out of his mind that you know, like they could only, like, it took a long time to set up that thing, because like, you know, you had all these moving parts, you had steam, you had all this stuff. So Jean-Claude Van Damme comes flying out, and he has a line, and so like he flies out, he says his line, then he's like, cut. And everyone's like, what the fuck? Why are you cutting? And he's like, I said the wrong word in my line. He thought he said one thing, but he actually said another. And D'Souza's like, no, Jean-Claude, you said the right line. And Jean-Claude's like, no, I didn't. I said this instead. And so they're like, well, fuck. Okay, well, you know, he ruined the take, so we gotta go back and redo it. So they went back and redid it. And while they were like setting up, D'Souza like went back and looked at the dailies, and it turns out Jean-Claude Van Damme said the line right. And he was just so coked out of his mind that he thought he said it wrong. And so like, and so he's like, oh, okay, well, you know, we'll just have to do the second take. So they do the second take, and Jean-Claude Van Damme comes flying out. And then he says the line wrong, like he thought he did in the first one. And he was like, nailed it. D'Souza's like, oh my God.
It makes me sad. This whole it's starting to depress me a little bit just hearing about how terrible the behind the scenes movie was.
Yeah.
Like, God.
Yeah, I
Can you
guess I
imagine working on
understand more now why it's so phoned in.
Yeah, and so
It hurts.
And so here's another thing, which is why this movie is so bad.
Another reason.
Another reason.
Is this why you have 2 pages of notes,
Yeah.
front and back?
So here's an interesting bit. So basically, they were shooting this movie. They needed to get a PG-13 rating, and the very first cut of it, they got an R. And
Wait, why?
because around this time, I think
Was he doing coke on screen?
no.
I can't think of anything that would. This is like a PG movie.
Well, let me finish my story, man.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just let him talk.
Just let him talk.
So around this time, I think there had been like a school shooting or something like that. So the MPA was like kind of like going hard against like all types of violence. So
Sounds familiar.
they were like, well, the movie can't be R-rated. So like they went back and they like started like re-editing it, and they submitted it a couple more times, and it kept coming back R. And
God, who was the person who had to watch this movie over and over again?
someone at the MPA. So finally, D'Souza just takes like a knife to this thing and just like cuts the shit out of it. And he submits it to the MPA, and he's like, okay, there's no way they're not going to give me a PG-13 off this. So they come back and they're like, congratulations, we're giving you a G rating. And Jesus was like, what? No teenager is going to go see a G-rated movie. And so he had to go back and basically he didn't have any budget left, any money left to redo it. So like he got Jean-Claude Van Damme to come in and say the word shit and just like put it in the movie. And they're like, okay, you get a PG-13.
Oh my God.
So like one shit gave them the rating that they
What the
wanted.
shit you talking about?
I can't talk about this movie anymore. God, that's terrible.
But this movie ended up
You're going to talk about
What
it.
did I just
He's
say?
gonna force it.
this movie
You're going to listen to it.
ended up being Jean-Claude Van Damme's second highest grossing movie ever.
Wow.
I don't understand
I don't
how.
either.
People are weird, man. This is
I know I'm going to get a bunch of hate from this. Oh, you don't like Street
Who
Fighter?
are you people that paid to see this movie other than Vader?
I rented
see
it
it.
too. I rented it.
I saw it in the
You
theater when it
did?
came out.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Were you like?
I was a huge Street Fighter fan.
Were you enthralled with it?
No, I thought it was terrible.
Okay.
Actually,
okay.
in rewatching it, I thought it was better. Like now that I'm older, it's still a bad movie, but I was like, I don't remember it being, this okay. like it was much like when I saw it in the theater, I thought it was much worse than it was when on my rewatch here.
This is the start of the video game movies, right? One of this and Mortal Kombat were kind of like the beginning of that era.
I was looking at Mortal Kombat right now. Actually, it came out in '95. So
The year before
later.
was Mario Brothers.
Oh God!
Yeah, and so this was like kind of extending that string of really bad video game movies.
This is why we can't have good, nice things.
I don't remember the Mario Brothers.
You don't.
movie.
Oh God, that is the worst movie I've ever seen.
Please don't make me watch
if
it.
you guys make us watch that, I quit.
It'll be for our video game episode.
It's so bad. It's so
This week
bad.
on the Salty Nerd Podcast, we are auditioning people to replace Vader.
They got John Leguizamo to play an Italian.
God, man.
Oh, that's vaguely familiar now.
Oh, the
Bob Hoskins.
Goombas or Goompas or whatever the frick those things are called.
They got
Goombas.
Goombas, yeah.
yeah, they got what's his name, Dennis Hopper to play King Koopa.
Yeah. I just like I it's always like that. It's always that thing that happens when a big major production blockbuster movie comes out, but it's based off a video game. It's just absolute shit.
What
And
about
it's always been that way. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head that has been a decent rendition of a video game to a movie is Angelina Jolie's Tomb Raider.
who Steven S. D'Souza wrote that?
Did he really?
Yeah, the guy who wrote and directed Street Fighter wrote the.
He did a
Tomb Raider
much
movie.
better job on Tomb Raider.
He did a much better job on Die Hard too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Tomb Raider actually has a story attached to it.
You know?
Tomb Raider actually has a story attached to it.
Yeah.
So,
And that was a fun movie. Like video game movies are like cursed.
Well, how about?
And I think it's this freaking movie's fault.
I don't know if you noticed this or not, but like in the movie itself, Raul Julia's got like this little like control like chair thing
Oh,
that
the
he
thing
sits
just
in.
Oh,
floating
Vader
around.
did you
noticed
see
it.
the picture I
and,
sent?
and,
Yeah.
and it's literally the control stick for the for the Street
For the
Fighter
actual
Stick and
video
six
game.
buttons.
It's the arcade thing, right?
Yeah, that's his floating hover thing. That's
Yeah.
how he controls it.
Yeah,
with
they
the arcade
literally
controller.
just put that on his his control chair. It's just like
I can't.
But I was actually surprised on the rewatch at how accurate they made a lot of these characters to their video game counterparts. Like when I first saw this movie, I wasn't too happy with the with how they translated the characters, because in the video games, Ryu and Ken are like the main characters, and they made Gaul the main character in this one. But they like in watching it again, like I noticed like, oh wow, like they actually did a really good job,
So,
kind of like translating.
just a
them onto
quick
the screen.
comment on that. Their outfits are video game accurate, but it is 100% the argument against why you don't want to be 100% video game accurate.
Yeah.
You know, like when people
It
like
just
were bitching
doesn't
about the Avengers and
translate to the
Oh, yeah.
movie.
stuff like that. You know, well, their outfits will look stupid on the movie screen, and they're right.
yeah.
You gotta fix these things
Some
up.
artistic,
Yeah.
liberty.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because like my favorite character in the movie actually isn't one of the video game characters. It was,
You have a favorite character? in this
I
movie?
do.
Is it
I
Vega?
do.
My
no,
God.
No, it was DJ.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was M. Bison's black sidekick, who basically was like every stereotypical black guy you could think of
Yeah.
in this movie.
He
Where,
just
where
asked-
did his boxing gloves come from?
No, that's not the guy.
Oh, it's a different guy?
No, it's
Yeah.
the guy that like you ask him a question and he's like, hell no.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's that guy.
I thought that was
And then
Don
at the
Cheadle.
end, he like steals that big thing of the Raw
Of
Julia
fake
money.
Yeah. and like I enjoyed him because like he was like one of the few like obviously humorous characters in the movie, and him and Zangief, the Russian, Zangief just I thought was hilarious in this movie because like at one point DJ's like they're not paying, or like they paid me a crap load of money to be loyal to this guy.
He's like, you got paid?
And he was like, you got paid?
And he's like, wait.
And then
Bison is a bad guy?
Yeah. Bison's a bad guy. And then when he's fighting E Honda, they have this scene where like they're fighting over the model of Bisonopolis, and it looks like a scene from Godzilla.
Yeah, that's right.
They had the sound effects and the roars.
So bad.
And the guy they got to play Zangief, the Russian, looked just like him from the video game, like picture perfect. Like,
Yeah, he has a strong beard game going on.
yeah, he really did. Like he was the guy who looked the most like his video game counterpart in the movie. It was incredible.
God, I can't with this movie, man. It was
right.
so bad.
Let's wrap it up.
Can we wrap it up? Can
Yeah.
we go around the table? I hate this movie. It is awful. I agree with Matt. I want my $3.99 back from Amazon. Like, please erase this movie from my memory.
I'm embarrassed that it's in my viewer history.
I am fascinated by the detailed history and backstory that you gave me over this movie. It is very fascinating, all this cool behind the scenes stuff.
It's surprising how it turned out, considering all the crap it had.
Considering
to go through.
how much of an uphill battle it had, it the way it came out, whatever it is. But like, okay, so Kadish, do you love this movie?
No,
Okay.
God no.
Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give this thing like a 1 minus whatever, something around that low. What would you give this movie?
I'd probably give it a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
Wow, that's high praise. Jude, what about
Yeah,
you?
I agree with Kadish. It's a 2 or a 3 for me. Probably a 2.
Gets points for being video game accurate.
No, I don't give a shit about that. I've just seen worse movies.
It's also sad that this was Raul Julia's last movie because
Yeah.
he's such a good actor.
Yeah.
That kind of makes me bummed out because his kids, I would assume, probably love this movie because it was like, they were big fans of Street Fighter, and then their dad did this big role in that movie. They probably freaking love this movie, and that really bums me out. That's the last memory that they have.
I like how you guys always go off on tangents when it's my turn to give us.
Go ahead, Matt Vader. What do you think about this freaking movie?
Oh, it's terrible. I'll give it like a 1.2.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. All right.
I could literally talk about the making of this movie for hours.
I can't.
Well, you can
there's
do
just
it on
so
your
much
own
stuff.
podcast.
We're done. We're
So
done
much
now.
stuff to cover in this movie.
I can't talk about it anymore. I'm
Next
done.
week on the Kadish Movie Hour.
Before we get started into Jean-Claude Van Johnson, I'd like to remind everybody that you guys can go to saltynerdstore.com. We have all of our t-shirts, stickers. That's just about it. Go there, check out what
We got mugs.
We got mugs. We do have mugs. I'm going to work on making some more of those.
T-shirts.
T-shirts. I said that already. Thank
Baby
you.
bibs.
Do we have hats yet?
We should get bibs. Hats? No, we don't have hats
Let's
yet.
do hats.
Let's do hats.
Okay.
We'll do hats next week. Go to
Yeah.
saltynerdstore.com. There you can check out some of our products. You can help support the podcast and get some cool stuff for it. All right. Let's talk about the Amazon Prime original TV show, Jean-Claude Van Johnson.
What the last 2 weeks has been building up to.
This is what it's all
I've been
about,
wanting to
people.
talk about this show for months.
This is what it's all about.
Okay, we got 15 minutes.
During this
Go.
portion, we can't let Kadish talk at all.
She's still got 2 pages of notes over there.
You get the setup, and then we're going to go around. All right. So, Kadish, why don't you set the table for us? What is Jean-Claude Van Johnson all about?
So it's an Amazon original series, and it's basically this. It's basically this. The setup is that Jean-Claude Van Damme is a secret agent who moonlights as a action star, and he goes around the world shooting these movies. And when he's not shooting movies, he's going on secret missions to help ensure the freedom of the planet.
So
And-
his spy name is Jean-Claude Van Johnson,
yeah.
but his movie star name is
Jean-Claude Van Damme,
Right.
and his real name is Jean-Claude Van Verenberg.
yes.
JV or
V-
JC.
JCVV. Yeah. So basically, the show kind of centers around Jean-Claude Van Damme coming out of retirement to go back into the spy game in order to win the heart of his long-lost love.
Who's like 30 years younger than he
Yeah.
is.
And while he's doing it, we basically get to see all of his best movies crammed into this show as plot points.
Yes.
And it's a very self-aware meta take on everything Jean-Claude Van Damme related. So even if you're just kind of like a casual fan of Van Damme, you'll watch this show and just laugh your butt off.
Yeah.
But if you're like an actual fan of his, like he does a lot of like really self-depreciating like humor in this movie or in the show, and it's absolutely brilliant.
I really wanted to like credit him because he can look at himself like that and make a joke about it and make this TV show that's very like Deadpool level meta. And it's so funny. It like worked so well.
Yeah.
It was perfect for him.
And what's great about this is Kadish and I watched this when it originally came out, like what, a year ago, 2 years ago?
A little bit longer than I think it was 2017.
Okay. So we watched it then and we thought it was brilliant and hilarious. Well, then we watched it again for the podcast after we had watched Bloodsport and the movies that we talked about last week. And having revisited those movies and then rewatching this and like having all of those tropes fresher in our minds, it was just so much funnier on the second watch.
This movie takes on Bloodsport, Double Impact, Time Cop. Just like all of, like even like Hard Target, there's like a few nods to that in there. Like it just and you know it kind of pokes fun at celebrity culture and LA culture.
So the one person that I cannot get out of my head is the freaking California like Metro director that's doing this movie.
Yes.
The only time, like I kept watching this movie.
Are we filming?
I kept imagining Kadish having to work with somebody like that or being that person. I'm like, oh my God, no wonder he left Hollywood. It was hilarious. But yeah, I could only help but picture Kadish on set, like working with somebody like that. He's sitting there smoking his giant robot vape pen and he's like blowing smoke in Jean-Claude's face.
It's funny if you notice, like no one smokes a cigarette in this show. Everyone's vaping.
Yeah.
And you know, there's this great scene in the very first episode where Jean-Claude Van Damme goes to a restaurant, and the restaurant's called Dry, D-R-I. And it's just a restaurant that serves dry ramen noodles.
That's right.
And they give him like this plate of like right out of the package dry ramen square.
And it's got like some accoutrement on top of it.
And he's like, excuse me, but my ramen is dry. And then the waiter's like, yeah, that's our thing.
It's a concept, man.
Yeah, it's a concept, man. And he's like, well, can I have some water for my dry ramen? He's like, nah, man. No.
And he's like, we don't serve water here.
California.
We're a pop-up experience. We're not really a restaurant. and then the guy like actually looks up from his phone and sees him, and he's like, oh, you're. And Jean-Claude's like, yes, I know. And he's like, dude, like, have you been in anything recently? Like anything I've seen on Blu-ray or streaming? And he's like, no, I'm retired. Not Nicolas Cage retired, real retired.
And he's like, oh, I thought you were Nicolas Cage.
like the very beginning of the show, like we see Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's like in his bed at his like multi-million-dollar house, his lair. Everything has his initials on it, JCVD, just like everything. It's just monogrammed with his initials. And this.
Can we talk about the shower?
And this sexy naked girl just comes out and she's like, Jean-Claude, I just got out of your shower and my skin's all sticky. And he's like, yes, that's because it's coconut water. and she's like, your shower has coconut water? And he's like, of course it does. You do this every time you're over here. She's like, this is the first time I've been here. And he's like, of course it is. He's just like so depressed and over it.
He just doesn't care.
And like he gets up out of bed, he puts his feet in the JCVD branded slippers, and he goes downstairs, and everywhere there's like posters of him and his movies.
Time Cop.
And
all of them.
Hard Target. And like he gets on his Segway to go out to his driveway to pick up his newspaper. And he's just like so depressed, like he just like his life has no meaning anymore. And then like while he's at Dry, he sees this girl, and it was like this former flame of his, and they
were like partners. They were spy partners and lovers.
And he has a flashback of like the last time he remembers being with her.
They were training on a sniper range.
Yes, and so like he runs up to her and he's like, hey, I know things ended badly between us, but like I want to say hi to you. And she kind of lets it slip that she's like still in the spy game, and she's got this job in Bulgaria. And she's like, I'm done with you, Jean-Claude. And so after she leaves, he wants to get her back. So he goes to his agent,
Who was the mom from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
No. It was the
Cosby
Cosby
Show.
Show.
Oh, the Cosby. Oh, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, Cosby Show. Also the mom from Creed.
And you just showed your age so bad.
So apparently in this universe, the William Morris Agency, which is a really well-known talent agency in Hollywood, is a secret front for a government spy ring who basically sends people, around the world under the guise of making movies in order to, do spy stuff. And he goes to his agent, and at first his agent, who's played by Mama Huxtable, thinks that he's coming back for movies. So she's like pitching him all these like movies, and they're all action reimaginings of like really like.
Did you write down
stuff.
all the ones that she pitched?
Yes.
For? Oh
I
my
did.
God.
and so here's the thing. So she had an action reimagining of Ricky Tikki Tavi.
Oh, I used to love that.
She had an action reimagining of Anne of Green Gables. And an action reimagining of the story of P.F. Chang's, which is like a movie about how like the restaurant came
about.
So and all these movies have Channing Tatum attached to them. and the P.F. Chang movie has Jackie Chan as General So, who rides a giant chicken.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
But so like she's pitching all these movies to Jean-Claude, and she's like, oh, this one's good. It's at Paramount. It has Channing Tatum attached to it. And Jean-Claude's like, I don't think you understood me when I said I was back. Jean-Claude Van Damme is retired, but Jean-Claude Van Johnson is back. and so like she hits a button on her desk, and
all
like
the
her
windows close.
Yeah, her big office
turns into a fortress.
Yeah, and so like once the office is secure, she starts like talking real with him, and she's like, "Are you sure this isn't because you want to get that girl back?" And he's like, "No, I want to have meaning in my life. I want to do what's right. I want to get back in the game." And so she's
And
like,
also, I want her again.
yeah. And so basically, Jean-Claude Van Damme goes to this movie in Belarus, which is an action reimagining of Huckleberry Finn.
Get hooked.
and the movie's called
Great. I want to see this movie for real.
Yeah,
Right?
No kidding. Like this movie looked awesome. Basically, they gender swap Tom Sawyer into a woman, and so
I
Huckleberry
love
Finn.
you too, Tom.
Yeah, Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer are now lovers, and they're fighting, like evil in the South with a magic hammer. But like
magic paintbrush.
Yeah, magic paintbrush. And this whole movie, this fake movie within the show, it's called Huck.
Get hooked. I love that trailer that they did. The voiceover guy was freaking hilarious. Get hooked.
Like
it was
I would love to see this movie in real life. I would
too.
love to. Like it's so funny because like they have a black actor playing N-word Jim.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm offended by his name. What, Jim? No, the other one.
So then they recast him with a Chinese actor.
Yeah, and they call him C-word Jim.
Canceled.
Yeah, so canceled.
Yeah. And like for some reason, Jean-Claude Van Damme thinks that the guy who's playing N-word Jim is having an affair with the girl that he likes, and so like he basically gets him fired from the movie.
But then did you notice? I'm sure you noticed when they play the trailer later,
Yeah.
like the black guy's in part of the trailer, and then the Chinese guy's in the rest of the trailer.
Yeah, like everything about this movie, like it's very self-aware.
Oh yeah.
But it's amazing. Like for instance,
It's basically a parody.
Oh,
isn't
it's
it?
so great.
It comes really close to being a parody.
Yeah.
yeah. So like in the very first episode, there's a scene where Jean-Claude Van Damme is talking with the douchebag director that you were mentioning, and the director's like Jean-Claude, like this isn't like your time when people were just throwing kicks around and bad guys would attack one at a time. It's just not realistic. And then at the end of the episode, he's fighting all these like guards, security guards at this chemical factory.
Yeah.
And they're about to charge him, and the leader's like stops them all. He's like, wait. Got to go one at a time, otherwise this gets confusing.
You might bump into each other.
Yeah, you might bump into each other.
Just go one at a time.
Just go one at a time. And like that setup alone was just like fantastic. But they also set up the fact that Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's been out of the game for a while, so he's not quite at his peak.
He can't do the split.
So like his quote unquote gift is the ability to do the splits.
Yeah.
And so like at the beginning of the episode, like he tries to do the splits and like he fails, and then like the guy attacks him and just
knocks him in the face with a baton.
Yeah. And then
It looked like a hard hit too.
Yeah.
Like it was not. That didn't seem like a CGI fish. That was like full on to the face. Whack.
yeah. And then you see like by the end of the movie, like he like does the splits and he's like back and like he punches the guy in the balls, knocks him out.
He does the blood sport
his
move.
splits save the day.
His splits
Oh my
save the
god.
day.
Okay, I know it's too soon to talk about that finale, but the last episode where he stops the freaking conveyor opening door
Yeah.
with his split, and you could hear like ripping tissue and bones, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah. So in the climax of the movie, in order to stop the bad of the show, in order to stop the bad guy from escaping, like she has this helicopter in an underground bunker, and the tennis court above it is slowly opening to like let the helicopter out. So Jean-Claude Van Damme, in order to stop this, he uses his quote unquote gift, which is the splits.
He's like, I must use my gift.
And basically, he hooks his feet behind these like two like extending things from the ground, and he uses his
Muscle.
He
just uses
his leg
muscle.
muscles.
His muscle from Brussels.
Yeah, his muscles from Brussels to keep the thing from opening all the way so that he can give his partners time to go down there and stop the bad guy.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there all zenned out.
Yeah.
Like
He's in his
doing the
pose.
splits. Yeah.
He's stopping this giant machine from opening. It was gold.
I
dude.
must use my gift.
It was pure gold. I loved it. I love that moment too. And I was like, when the girl was like, Jean-Claude, you need to be the hero. And he's like, no, I am not the hero. You are. And she's like, go do your thing. And he sits there and he's got his little pose with the split. I was like, God, man, it's so funny.
Can we talk about Philippe?
Yes. Oh my God.
Philippe.
Philippe. Okay. So Philippe is basically Jean-Claude Van Damme's doppelganger. But
Yeah. Okay.
Sort of.
yeah, sort of.
Okay, so he goes into this factory and he has to go in disguise because people might recognize Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
So he puts on this disguise, and as he's walking in, people are like, hey, Philippe, as he walks by. It turns out he looks in his disguise. He looks exactly like one of the guys that works there, whose name is Philippe.
He's also a giant Jean-Claude Van Damme fan.
Who's a huge fan of Jean-Claude
this is
Van Damme.
the double impact.
Also played
nod.
by Jean-Claude Van Damme.
But both characters are played by Jean-Claude Van Damme.
God, the voice he does.
Oh, it's so great.
It's his hyper.
I can't even do it.
I can't do it either. I'm not even going to try.
Hello.
Don't try. Please don't try.
Do you like Time Cop?
Do you like? I can't do it. I can't do it. It's so funny though.
And it's just like really fucked up because Jean-Claude Van Damme told him that Looper was a better movie than Time Cop. And he's like, but if you're really me from the future, you would know that Time Cop is my favorite movie. And he's just so messed up over it.
And it's funny because so when Jean-Claude Van Damme does run into Philippe, his doppelganger, he says, "Who are you?" And Jean-Claude Van Damme is like, "I am you from the future." And then he puts his hand on Philippe's shoulder and he's like, "Don't worry, everything will be okay." And Philippe is like, "You are
He
not."
calls bullshit on him
Yeah, he
immediately.
calls
He's like,
bullshit.
like matter can't occupy like matter, dude.
So he uses the line from Time Cop, the one time travel rule that they had in that movie, and he says, you are not me from the future because like matter cannot occupy like space. And Jean-Claude Van Damme is just like floored. He's like,
Shit.
He's like, oh, well, they can in Looper.
he's like, well, in Looper, Bruce Willis touches Joseph Gordon-Levitt
All the
numerous
time.
and then Philippe is like,
do you really think
he's
that
like,
Looper is a better movie than Time Cop? And he's like, yes. And he's like, then you are not me. Dude, that was such a fantastic,
So great.
so great. The exchange between those two.
and the opening voiceover in the very first episode, it's like Jean-Claude Van Damme is like, "You might recognize me as the star of Time Cop, which is like Looper, only a million times better." It's like, "You might also recognize me from Bloodsport. You've probably seen it because it's played on TV constantly."
which is so true too.
Yeah.
This show is so great. It has so many great moments, and the storyline itself is actually quite clever. To be honest with you, I was
It really
into
is. Yeah.
It was really good.
Like the bad guy in the show, his name is Dragon Molotov. But they pronounce it Dragon. And he's like this Russian oligarch who basically his lifelong dream was to be a supervillain who could control the weather.
I can understand that.
So he created a drug empire, and like Jean-Claude's whole mission is to find out the source of this.
what is it,
This drug,
HK or
HK,
something? Yeah.
which is a heroin.
Hey, I want to buy drugs.
It's a heroin ketamine mix.
There's an episode that reminds me like so much of Tokyo Drift.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it.
That was on purpose.
Freaking love it.
And so Dragon Molotov He's also the financier for Jean-Claude Van Damme's movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And his whole thing is about like he's building this. He created a drug cartel so he could fund his lifelong dream of creating a weather machine, a machine that could control the weather in his underground lair. And so like Jean-Claude Van Damme's been like slowly kind of dismantling his drug network. And Molotov loves it because he's like, yes, I always wanted a secret agent to try to come and stop me.
Dude, the first time he meets Jean-Claude, he's like, it's Jean-Claude Van Damme. He's so excited to see him.
And he's always hanging out with that douchey director. He's just like, the director's always like, hey, me and Dragon are going to go off and get some dinner. You want to come? Yeah.
We're gonna do an 8-ball, Yin.
That's right.
But like there's so much great stuff in it. Like there was a scene in, I believe it was episode 3, where these thugs come to like kill Jean-Claude, or they're coming to get a microchip back from Jean-Claude.
A microchip that's like
It's huge.
giant.
1988
Yeah,
processor.
It's like bigger
Yeah.
than my cell
And she
phone.
was
It's like the size of my iPad.
She was so mad at him. Like that can't be what it is. That microchips are tiny. What are you doing? This isn't the 80s anymore, Jean-Claude. She's so mad at it. Actually, at the end of the episode, turns out to
It's
be
like
exactly.
key, yeah.
and basically these Russian thugs kidnap Philippe, who survived all of his friends getting murdered at the factory. Because after Jean-Claude beats up all the security guys, he blows up the factory and kills everyone. But Philippe survives with a sprained neck. So but he's all sad because all of his friends are dead, and he finds out that his idol Jean-Claude Van Damme is actually a bad guy. And so like the Russians recruit Philippe to help them infiltrate the movie set.
They give him a haircut.
Yeah,
and
so they give him a haircut.
He
He looks just like Jean-Claude Van
just
Damme.
like, except he talks like a freaking Smeagol.
And so like
You killed all my friends. And you sprained my neck. And you said Looper was a better movie.
Stop! I can't.
and so like there's a scene where Jean-Claude Van Damme is fighting these Russian thugs, and they infiltrated the set by getting into costume as like Confederate soldiers. And so Jean-Claude Van Damme is in his Huckleberry Finn outfit.
He's in overalls with one strap.
Yeah, with one strap.
And he looks pretty good for his age, though. Too.
And they have this ferry boat set. And Jean-Claude Van Damme starts fighting these like thugs who are legit trying to kill him.
Yeah, for real. Like he's actually beating the shit out of these
and
guys.
everyone thinks it's part of the movie.
And the director's like,
director's losing
are we
his
filming? Are we
mind.
filming?
this.
Fucking John, why the fuck are we filming? People are getting shot for real. One dude gets
People are legit dying. Like one guy gets impaled and he's like, oh my God, the effects, that was amazing.
Yeah. The director's like, cut print, and like his script supervisor's like, I think people are really dead. No one pays attention to her.
This scene isn't in the script. He's like, I don't care.
Jean-Claude himself gets rid of all the bodies, like puts them on a golf cart and like, drives them away. You gotta watch this show.
And Jean-Claude has a sidekick whose name is Louis. And Louis
is such a badass.
Louis was a child who was raised by the cartel,
Yes.
by the drug cartel.
Yes.
And he did so many terrible things in his youth that he can literally look people in the eye and they can see all the terrible things he did and be traumatized from it.
Yeah. He like can literally render people insane by just gazing into their eyes.
There was this one scene where they were trying to get past a bouncer to go into a party, and he's like, I got this, don't worry about it. And he's like, you're going to let us in. And he's just staring at the dude, and the bouncer finally goes, oh my God, fine. You know, he covers his eyes and runs away.
Yeah, like he actually sees glimpses
of the guy's history
of how terrible this guy has been, and he just can't handle it.
I need to note something real quick because I think it's awesome. There are literally tears rolling down Alex's face right now.
I'm going to use your dog as a napkin.
Well, the funny thing about Louis is that he's the character Rico Suave from Hannah Montana. He was the child actor.
Oh, speaking of like cameos of people that we see in other stuff, if you guys remember in The Mandalorian, that very opening scene of the first episode where they walk into the bar and the dude's got the big old beer and he's talking like Huttese, that's the same dude who fights him in the scenes in Huck where he accidentally punches him in the face. And he's like, oh my gosh, Jean-Claude, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to, I thought you were going to duck. And it was like just a ploy to get Jean-Claude off the set. But I just thought it was really cool. You get to see kind of like these reoccurring people in these doing stunt work.
The Tokyo Drift episode where
Oh my
Jean-Claude
God, so great.
has to go undercover in this underground race ring.
What is the chef guy with the blonde goatee? What's that guy's name?
Oh, you would know.
He looks just like him.
What?
The guy.
The celebrity chef with the blonde Bobby.
No, it was Guy Fieri.
Guy
Yes.
Fieri. He looks just like Guy Fieri
He
in
does.
this episode.
He does. He puts on like this crazy
Bleached blonde
blonde
goatee.
wig and goatee.
And
yes.
they could only find this like crappy Honda to race in.
It's like all rusted out.
He's like, why didn't you tell me you didn't know how to drive a stick? Sitting there, still like trying to park it. And it's all freaking out.
and Lewis is trying to coach him through this. He's like, okay, now we have to play this cool. We can't call attention to ourselves. And then he just walks up to the main guy,
Big boss.
and says,
Hey, I want to buy drugs.
and everyone just all the music stops. They all just look at him, and he's like, how much do you want?
Vader, you haven't said anything yet.
I don't. I'm good. You guys do it. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Well,
Well, at least you're smiling, so at least you're
yeah,
having fun.
I'm getting a laugh in once in a while.
Okay.
And the great thing about this episode is that, so like, do you remember in Bloodsport where basically, the whole climax is like he's blind,
Yes.
but like,
Yes.
but like he trained.
The climax of this episode is that
he
he goes blind
Yeah.
for the race.
Yeah, he basically he ties a blindfold around his eyes.
And then the drug cartel guy is like, oh, this guy's crazy. I'm going to do it too. And he puts a blindfold over himself. And as soon as he starts driving, he kills himself.
He crashes and dies.
His car bursts into a
And then the
flame.
race is completely over
But Jean-Claude doesn't know that.
because he's blindfolded.
Yeah, so like he's
He
actually
just keeps driving, but he's driving like 10 miles an hour.
no, he's driving perfect.
Yeah, he's doing it. He's like at the beginning of the race, guys like, this is a drifting race. And Jean-Claude's like, what's drifting? And then he puts the blindfold on and he's drifting around these corners and like these loop-de-loops,
Yeah.
like super perfect.
It's so
And the
graceful.
dude's in the background, the dude's car is on fire. And he's,
And like everyone takes off.
dude, this is my favorite episode of this whole freaking show.
And it also has the best song in the
Oh
entire
my
show.
god!
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Suck my dick, suck my motherfucking dick.
Oh, I love this episode.
But okay, so like in
I'm crying.
addition to how good this episode is, there was an episode a little bit. I think it was episode 4, if I'm not mistaken. And this is an episode where basically the girl that Jean-Claude loves gets killed, and so he goes back in time to
He time
save
cops
her.
her.
He time cops her. So like he goes back in time, he knocks himself out and puts himself in the trunk of his car. And then he infiltrates the party that Dragon Maltov is throwing for the premiere of Huck. And so like at this point, Dragon has kidnapped Lewis and has him in his underground bunker on this booby trap that's set to blow up if any weight changes.
Yeah, he's got- it's
And
a-
then
it's a-
then they Indiana Jones this one.
Yeah, it's a scale with claymores on all 4 corners, and if the weight changes at all, it blows up.
Yeah.
It's very much
So-
Indiana Jones moment. Yeah.
So the Jean-Claude from the future switches places with Lewis in order to save his life.
Oh, I had completely forgotten about that part.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
No, it was great.
And then the actual Jean-Claude from our time comes back, and he's like, and that's how we get the explanation that he's being time cop because of time travel. So like, there's actual time travel in the show.
Yeah.
But then Philippe shows up, and he's drunk.
You killed all my friends.
And then like Philippe steals the time machine from the future Jean-Claude and travels back in time, and the future Jean-Claude blows up.
Yeah.
And
They throw him a gun.
Yeah.
Because he's going to shoot somebody,
Yeah.
but then the gun sets the weight off on the scale
Yes.
and it blows him up. And then the Jean-Claude that's on the
the present day Jean-Claude.
present day Jean-Claude is like, so
that was Philippe,
that was
right?
Philippe, right? And everybody's like, I guess so.
And then, like, after all that goes down, Dragon comes back down into his lair, and he starts doing the villainous monologue thing, where he's like, "Ever since I was a little boy, I've wanted to control the weather." He's like, he's like, "I see you found my secret weather controlling machine." And so like, he has this thing where he's like, I've always wanted this secret agent adversary, and all of a sudden the guy from Double Impact is now my nemesis. And then he introduces his sidekick.
What was his name?
So okay. So get this. So he's like, allow me to introduce my henchman, Mini Mano, which
Literally translates means
no. Basically, he says like in Belarusian that translates to big man with fist who likes to smash things. And he's like, but I like to keep it simple, so we will just call him Marble Hands. So this huge guy comes out. He's got like these big stone fists, and Jean-Claude Van Damme has to start fighting him. And so like he's running around, and Marble Fist is basically just like
knocking him around,
breaking shit left and right with his like undefeatable marble,
like literal
fist.
like Hulk smash
Yes.
hands, but they're made of
marble.
Yeah.
And so like eventually Jean-Claude Van Damme does the splits and like hits him in the balls, and he just like keeps hitting him in the balls, and finally
like a speed bag.
and finally Mini Mano just kind of like falls to his knees, and he's like dazed, and his fists are like up in the air, and Jean-Claude gets up and he starts like
meditating.
Like he's got his hands out, and he's got this really intense look on his face, and everyone just stops, and they're like, oh, the dim muck, the touch of death from Bloodsport. And so Jean-Claude's like, what? He like hits the hands, and the marble hands explode. and Mini Mano's just like, no, he like falls over.
My favorite part about that scene is right after that, the bad guy, Dragon Molotov or whatever his name is, starts running away, and Jean-Claude spin kicks a piece of marble that's shaped like a thumb and kicks it into the back of his head.
And into his skull. Yeah.
Falls over dead.
Whacked him.
God, this freaking show is amazing.
Yeah.
But he wasn't even the real bad guy.
No, it was like the agency that he worked for.
So the William Morris agency is actually
It was
the secret
Claire
bad
Huxtable.
guy. Claire Huxtable was the actual bad guy. She basically, the William Morris agency is actually a front for a criminal organization run by Morris.
The architect.
The architect who Jean-Claude Van Damme thought was just a myth. Like William was apparently a real guy.
The guy from West Wing and Jurassic Park 2, Lost World, Eddie Carr, he's like a lawyer, and he plays in a bunch of stuff. He's all over the place.
Yeah. But Jean-Claude Van Damme discovers that he's been used all of his career to actually do crimes as opposed to saving the world. So
like,
he
I want to
feels
be
betrayed.
the hero. And he's like, son, there's no heroes. It's such
Nobody's a hero.
Nobody's a hero. And he starts laughing, like blowing him off like he's nothing.
Yeah. So after he kills Morris,
Spoiler alert.
he kills Morris, and now Claire Huxtable knows that he's onto them, and so he's like
Claire Huxtable.
I gotta look up her name.
Felicia Rashad.
No, but I meant her character.
He's like I have to go where no one will ever find me. And so he goes to a Blockbuster video.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. They have a training montage.
Jane.
Jane. They have a training montage inside of a Blockbuster. And all the movies are on this. And the younger girl walks in. She's like, what did she say? She says something like, I didn't know there was any of these left. She starts taking VHS tapes off the thing and like blowing the dust off of them.
And like he's like showering in bottles of coconut water.
Yeah, he just buys all these coconut waters and just like pours them over himself to clean himself.
Pay up and set up.
And he's also got this weird diet where he eats nothing but Pop-Tarts and toaster pastries.
There was another scene. He's in hideout. There's another like subplot about him being an orphan, basically.
Yeah, he goes to France.
Yeah, he goes to France,
goes to Brussels,
disappears, and he's like in this old orphanage that's abandoned, and he's got a 55-gallon drum that's on fire, and he like it's filmed almost like an action scene where he like takes out this hanger, and he starts bending it, and he's like doing it all aggressively, and then it turns out that he's just using it to hold his toaster strudel
over the open flame. And he can't even toast a toaster strudel properly. Like it catches on fire. And he freaks out,
whacking it. He kicks it across the court.
I think you guys like this show way more than I do.
Dude, this show is so fucking
It's
funny.
so funny.
Yeah, it is good.
But
Do you have any favorite moments? You want to chime in?
I think you've covered them.
He cooks his Pop-Tarts in the microwave.
Yeah,
it's like really weird.
Psychopathic.
Oh man.
And you're constantly like whenever like he's cleaning the statue of himself in Brussels.
Oh, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah, and like you're constantly reminded of how
washing his balls.
how unimportant he actually is.
Yeah.
And these two girls come up and they're like, "Hey, would you mind?" And they have like their camera phone with him. He's like, "Oh yeah, sure." And so like he tries to take a picture with them. And they're like, "What are you doing?"
Like, no,
They're like, oh no, we wanted you to take a picture of just us.
just us.
Yeah.
In front of that building over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he tries to take a picture of them in front of his statue of him doing the splits, and they're like, "Actually, we want the Ministry of Agriculture behind us." And he's like,
Is that a real statue?
yeah.
Yes.
It is? They have a statue of Jean-Claude Van Damme doing a split.
Don't you want to go now?
I do. I did not know that was real. I thought
I didn't know that was
Should
real.
we take a class trip?
Please.
A pod
Maybe if we
trip?
get enough patrons, we'll take a trip to France and take a picture in front
Okay.
of Jean-Claude Van Damme's statue.
Let's have a raffle and we'll take a patron with us if we get enough money.
So they hide out at this abandoned Blockbuster Video, and they have a training montage where Jean-Claude Van Damme teaches his girlfriend how to fight, basically.
Yeah.
Because she's been traumatized because she actually killed a guy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She got her first
She got her
kill.
first
and she's
kill.
been like PTSD or something, and she
Yeah.
can't fight anymore.
Yeah. And so like they're preparing for the final showdown with Jane, Claire Huxtable. And so basically the final episode of this series is Jean-Claude Van Damme goes and has a confrontation with Jane, and they take on all of her private security, and she tries to escape. And that's when he uses his gift to keep her from escaping. And while he's using his gift, his girlfriend goes down to confront her, and she has to fight the other female agent
Yeah.
who was playing
was a good fight,
Tom
too.
Sawyer
She was playing Tom Sawyer.
in the movie, Huck. And
Everyone's a secret spy.
and also Lewis just like murders everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
like he goes full cartel.
Yeah, he shaves his head. He's got like snake tattoos.
Yeah. Yeah. So on set, Lewis was the hairstylist for Van Damme.
Yeah. And makeup artist, too, right?
Yes. And he's been wearing makeup this whole time, which you don't realize until the final
And he
episode.
wipes his face off, and he's got the
He's
snake
got this giant face snake tattoo.
all across. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
It's badass.
And he goes full ham on these guards at Claire Huxtable's like fortress or whatever, and he just wipes out like the entire like. There's a kind of a setup where she kind of like jokes off Jean-Claude, like, "You're only one person. I have a whole army after me," and he's like, "Or do you?" And you
like,
see
everybody's
dead. There's a guy up against the window and he's got blood hanging out. It's just
like the whole storyline for this show is basically every Jean-Claude Van Damme movie you've ever seen mixed up into one movie.
Yes.
You know, and it's not a long series either. It's like 6 episodes
That's
long.
not. It's not very long at
I'm
all.
so disappointed that it got canceled after one season because
so
it's
good.
so good.
Especially because like at the end, like they ended on a cliffhanger
Yeah.
where Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's in a wheelchair now, but he's bought the orphanage that he grew up in and he reopened it for, for other orphans now. It's called the Jean-Claude Van Varenberg Memorial Orphanage.
And they're like, memorial means like for somebody's death, right? And he's like, he is dead.
No, it was the Jean-Claude Van Damme Memorial.
Jean-Claude Van Damme
and he's
Memorial.
like, Jean-Claude Van Damme is dead. And then, after this happy kind of ending, all of a sudden everyone freezes and he's like, what's going on? And then like the same characters that he's with show up
Oh my God.
from a time vortex, and they're like, we need your help for the Time Wars. And Jean-Claude Van Damme just looks at the camera, and then it cuts to black.
Dude, I want to watch that movie.
I'm like, I want to see season 2 where the
Yeah.
Time Wars break out.
They come out, they have like holographic guns and they're all like robotic. They got like Borg parts, dude.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was like the perfect way to end that season.
Absolutely.
And I'm very sad that we're never going to get to see what
I
happens
know.
next.
Are we never going to get to see it?
No, it got canceled.
Oh, well, we need to
No
make that
season
come
2.
back.
We
Yeah.
do need to make that come back.
Yeah.
That's a hashtag.
We're gonna put up a petition on our Twitter account.
Absolutely.
And you need to
Make
get
Jean-Claude-
on board.
Make Jean-Claude Van Johnson back, come back.
You know what's terrible
We'll figure it out.
is like Amazon has this really bad habit of taking these like brilliant shows that they make and just canceling them. Like
Yeah.
the same thing that happened with The Tick. The Tick was great.
Ah, the Tick. I loved the
Yeah.
Tick.
So like I would have loved to have seen them do more Jean-Claude Van Johnson, because it was a half-hour show. Like
Yeah.
how much could it have cost?
Yeah, there wasn't really much to it. And you just got Jean-Claude and a couple
Yeah.
other actors and
Yeah.
stuff.
I just don't think that it was as popular.
It should be.
Yeah.
Because it was freaking hilarious.
Yeah. It's
But
it's a slow burn.
it's a generational thing, though, I think, too. Because
Yeah. Also, like if it's so much better if you're a fan of Jean-Claude.
Yeah.
Like if you're familiar with his movies and you kind of like get the joke.
Like, I didn't even know this show existed until you guys pointed it out to me. And I was like, oh, I didn't know he made a show on Amazon Prime. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't think they marketed it at all.
Yeah, I never heard of it. And then you said it right off the bat. Is like, watching it the first time, it's a good show and it's fun. But if you go back and watch all of his movies and then watch this show, it's like 10 times better.
So much better.
So much better. And I'm like, that's so true. So you're right. Like, super fans of Jean-Claude would love this show. But like the average person who might not be like into it, they probably wouldn't even.
Any super fans probably already seen it.
Yeah,
but
it's very inside jokey too.
Yeah.
Like if you're just a casual, don't know much about Jean-Claude Van Damme, and you're looking at a show to watch, it's not a very good show. Like
how dare you?
By and large, it's just not. But like, it's funny if you are in on the joke.
Yeah.
And like because when Jude and I first watched it, like we were just kind of like casually going along. We're like, the show's enjoyable. It's not great, but like it's enjoyable. But then on rewatching it after we revisited a lot of his movies, we were like, the show's brilliant.
Yeah. Now we can have a recording of us laughing for 2 hours talking about this movie.
Yeah.
Or this TV show. It's brilliant. It really is.
I disagree. I don't think that it's not a good show. It's not.
Yes, I thought it was really clever.
Yeah,
like,
it's
even
a clever
just
show,
on its own.
and I think even if you're not familiar with the history of Jean-Claude Van Damme, I think it's still funny. However, if you are really familiar with his work, it's brilliant and hilarious.
Super meta.
Alex, what did you think of the Jurassic Universe nod in the show? Yes.
Oh, they did. They was like they were casting somebody.
Oh no! So like after the Huck movie,
yes, I remember that.
tanks because Dragon Molotov dies and he was their financier, so the movie falls through. The director is on the set and he's like drunk and like all depressed because this is like his big movie. And
he's like, I'm finished.
Yeah, and Jane shows up and she's
Claire
like,
Huxtable.
Yeah, Claire Huxtable, and she's like, I'll make you a deal. She's like, I'll give you the Jurassic Universe franchise. And he's like, Jurassic Universe? And she's like, yes, dinosaurs in space.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that until now. That's right. Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
And apparently Channing Tatum's attached.
That fits perfect into the Jurassic June.
And she's like, I will give you Jurassic Universe as long as you swear never to talk about this movie ever again.
Never mention this show.
Yeah, never mention this movie again.
That's great. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give this show, Matthew Kadish?
Oh, I got to give it a 10.
Yeah.
The show, it was kind of interesting the way it came about, because what Amazon used to do with its original series is they would have what they call pilot season. And basically they commissioned a bunch of pilots for shows that they were thinking about doing. And they would put all the pilots out there, and then you could watch the pilots and then vote on which pilots you wanted to see go to series. And so they would basically do their series order based off of like the feedback they got from their Prime users. Mm-hmm. And the year that this show had its pilot come out, I can remember watching this along with The Tick and a couple others, and then going on Amazon's website and filling out the survey to let them know like I wanted more Jean-Claude Van Johnson, stuff like that. But after it got the series order, it took like another year before like the actual series came out. So I think the pilot was 2016, but then the show itself came out in 2017 or something. I think you're right. So there was like a long period between the point where Jude and I watched the pilot episode and then when we watched the actual series. And I think that might have hurt it a little bit.
Yeah. That's a bummer, man. It'd
probably be different. Like if this were like a Netflix show where they just dropped the entire thing like at once and did like the hype for it, it probably would have done better. But it's a shame because it's a hidden gem on Amazon.
Yeah, and I remember when we watched the pilot for it and it was just one episode, we were like, I don't know about this. This is going to be terrible. And like we were like, this is good. This is clever. This is funny. Yeah. And we were both like, oh God, I hope they make it into a series. And then when they did, we were so jacked about it.
That's awesome.
If you're a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme or you're a fan of 80s action movies, like this is definitely a show worth watching.
Absolutely.
And it's free with Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Absolutely. Jude, what do you give this scale of 1 to
10? I give it an 8.
Ooh. I was expecting a 10.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you.
You did disappoint me. Vader, you haven't said shit this entire time.
I haven't been able to get a word in edgewise. It's all good. I'd give it a 7.
7?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
What was your favorite part of the series?
I don't know. It was just
all around,
all over. It was good. Yeah. 7-7's a good score.
Okay.
Yeah, 8's a good score too.
Okay. Me and Kiddish were like 10, 100%. It's a good show. All right, guys. Well, that's the episode today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to listen to more episodes, you can go to saltynerdpodcast.com. We have all of our stuff there. It'll take you either to iTunes or Google Play, and whatever phone you have or whatever device you're using, it'll direct you to that streaming platform. So please go there. Don't forget to leave a review. If you give us a 5-star review, hit us up on Twitter or Instagram. You can DM us and say, hey, I give you a 5-star review, and we will send you something in the mail as a thank you. It always helps us to grow this podcast and to make more content to have people leave reviews for us. So you can go there, go to saltynerdpodcast.com, subscribe, leave a review, get a sticker. Thank you, Mike Norton, for giving us a 5-star review. I hope you enjoy your
Thanks,
swag,
Mike.
your salty swag. And
Oh, that sounds gross. You want some salty
you want
swag?
some salty swag. I'm
Here,
stickers.
I'm gonna-
Stickers.
let me
We're
give you
talking
some-
about stickers, people.
Maybe give you some boob dollars while we're at it there.
Yeah, hold on. All right, so where can Jesus Christ, where can we find everybody on the socials? Matthew Kadish, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthew Kadish, Kadish.
And Jude, where can they find you?
At I am Juju on the socials.
Nice. And Matt Vader, Sweet Cheeks himself, where can they find you?
Wow.
Babyface.
You can find me at Matt Vader 74 on the socials and also on Twitch.
Yeah, you're doing something with that, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, big things coming.
What are you playing?
World of Warcraft, Terraria.
How's that going for you?
It's really confusing.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's a complex game.
It's funny watching
Yeah.
his stream because he's like, I don't know what I'm doing.
So what the hell is this? I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
So go check out
It's
Matt
a weird
Vader.
game. But
He's a grandpa playing video games. Go check it
yeah,
out.
there's got to be a niche audience out there of some 50-year-old fat ass playing video games on Twitch
Gotta
with
be.
all these kids.